Things that go on in other hotels don't happen at the Regent Beverly Wilshire. Mr. Lewis, however, is a very special customer, and we like to think of our special customers as friends. Now, as a customer, we would expect Mr. Lewis to sign in any additional guests, but as a friend, we're willing to overlook it. Now, I'm assuming that you're a relative?
Yes.
I thought so. Then you must be his...
Niece?
Of course.
Hello, movies. Welcome to Supporting
Hello,
Cast.
movies?
Hello, movies. I'm
No,
starting with new intros.
Sorry, our listeners' names
Are movies. Hello, movies.
Hello,
and
movies.
welcome to Supporting Cast, the show about the undersung heroes of the film industry. You may not recognize their names, but you will recognize their work. With me, as always, is Lincoln Vickery.
Hello, nerds.
And Charlie Davenport.
Hello. Can I get you to do two versions? One where you don't call everyone movies and one where you do, just in case we need to talk about that.
Can I have a version where you keep that in?
Yeah. No, we have two.
yeah,
We'll have two.
Yeah,
We'll do both.
it's absolutely.
Then we'll see how we feel.
With me, as always, is Charlie Davenport
Hello.
and Lincoln Vickery.
Hello, movies.
Hell yes. This is an ongoing series about the work of Héctor Elizondo. If you want a full breakdown of his career, please watch our Taken of Pelham 1, 2, 3 episode. Is it not Pelham?
Just Pelham.
Just Pelham.
Just Pelham will
Silent
do.
Age.
I wasn't in that episode. And this episode is, of course, about Pretty Woman.
Walking down the street.
Walking down that street. How are we all, guys?
Yeah, I'm really good. How are you?
I'm good. You know, I'm just thinking about Pretty Woman 1.
In general?
No, I'm excited to talk about this one because I think I was genuinely surprised by my reaction to it because I came into it guns a-blazing thinking I was going to be, you know, offended for all these reasons. And yeah, I'll let you know when we get to it, but I kind of wasn't.
Seamus, this is your first time watching the movie Pretty Woman.
First time.
About a pretty woman.
First time watching a movie about a pretty woman.
What if there was a woman that was quite beautiful?
What if there was a, to be fair, very pretty woman?
Has anyone ever looked better in a film?
It's
Like,
hard-
I
it
honestly,
is
she
hard
looks amazing.
She looks wonderful.
Hard to find one.
I watched this movie in two halves this time. I started watching it, had a lot of notes, got called into work early, and then had to finish it the next morning. And that was about the last half hour. I hadn't had my coffee, so maybe that colored my enthusiasm a little bit.
Seamus.
I was a bit grumpy. I don't think I like this movie.
Oh,
Right off the
interesting.
bat.
I'm shocked.
I also watched it in two halves this time because I straight up fell asleep.
Yeah, you
And
did
then
say
I
that.
watched it again and was a little bit grumpy because I had to rewatch the ending of Pretty Woman because I didn't like this movie either.
Okay, cool,
But for
cool.
reasons that are not what I thought.
See, because when you said I'm surprised by my reaction to this movie, I was like, I thought you fell asleep in it. I thought you were pissed off.
I was surprised that the thing that I was the most annoyed by this movie is that I was bored by it. That was my most surprising take. I was like, this movie's kind of boring.
Welcome to the movie podcast where we hate movies.
I watched this movie and then I immediately put it on again.
Look,
Immediately I was just like, let's just chuck that round. Let's run that one round the horn again. Let's have a look.
there's definitely a lot to like in it. And by a lot to
I
like,
agree.
I mean Julia Roberts. And Hector Elizondo.
There we go.
So I think before we get into, it's just like a little tidbit of what we're going to be arguing about for the next couple of hours, I'm sure. We should probably talk about Hector. Just a quick little.
So I've got from last we saw him in American Gigolo. I've got just kind of a list of selected Héctor Elizondos. From 1980 to 1981, he was in Freebie and the Bean, where he played Detective Sergeant Dan Bean Delgado.
Hey, he's a titular character.
He's the Bean
He's the
in
Bean.
Freebie and the Bean.
He puts the bean in Freddy.
That's not a
and-
supporting cast, though. He's the lead. He's the lead.
Yeah,
man.
that's
Oh,
true. It's
shit,
true.
shut it
I
down,
don't wanna
guys.
talk
Shut the
about
whole
that.
thing down. In 1982, very importantly, he does his first feature film with Gary Marshall. The film is called Young Doctors in Love.
The movie that Gary Marshall pitched him on a basketball court, though.
Yes, that's right.
Famous story where Héctor Elizondo hit him in the head with a basketball and then got a career out of it.
In 1984, again, he does The Flamingo Kid with Gary Marshall. This will be a running theme. He does all of Gary Marshall's 18 movies. In 1985, he does a TV movie called murder, by reason of insanity, which I've included just for the title because I think that's a delight. In 85 to 86, he plays defense attorney Jesse Steinberg in the TV show Foley Square.
A lot of like soft background noises in that one.
Yeah, there's a lot of crunching feet.
There's someone with a watermelon smashing it together.
Seamus? Pretty good.
Hey, thanks.
Pretty good. Congratulations. In 1987, he's in Overboard as a Portuguese garbage scourer skipper. I watched Overboard. Well, Seamus, you walked in on me shamefully watching Overboard this morning before we picked up Charlie.
It felt like I'd walked in on you watching hentai.
I would feel more at ease if you walked in on me watching the most horrific animated pornography you've ever seen.
Would you mind just giving us the very brief elevator pitch of what Overboard is?
Yeah, 'cause I have no idea. I'm
Charlie,
so
do
intrigued.
you know the pitch of Overboard?
No, but all I know
Okay.
is it's more spicy than some hentai, so I like.
So it's
explain.
it's Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell.
Oh, great!
Absolutely.
Nothing embarrassing about that.
So, Goldie Hawn is a very rich lady, and Kurt Russell is like a down on his luck carpenter.
Great start.
Great start. Kurt Russell comes onto Goldie Hawn's boat, and then she asks him to make him like a shoe rack, but he does it in oak. But she didn't tell him she wanted it in cedar.
Elevator pitch
Hate
here.
it when
Lincoln.
that happens.
Sorry, you're right.
We have
Anyway,
a whole notes on it. We're like, scene one.
yeah, I've got the whole thing. They argue about that. Then she throws him overboard. And he's really bitter about that. Then, a couple days later, Goldie Hawn is looking for her wedding ring and also falls overboard, but Goldie Hawn loses all of her memory. So, then Kurt Russell sees her on TV because she's like a famous lady that's lost her memory, because that's what you see on the news all the time. And then he's like, I know what I'll do. What I'll do is go and claim her as my wife and trick her to basically be a slave for me in my house, and then do awful things. Eventually, of course...
This is a comedy.
This is a comedy. And eventually, of course, they fall in love because she realizes that her ways of being a rich,
Wealthy and
snooty
independent
lady is bad, and that if she had a husband and children, she'd be much better off.
So I walked in on the last 40 minutes of this, and then Lincoln was like, do you want to come in and watch the last 40 minutes of Overboard? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, okay, I just need to tell you what this is about. I was like, you know what? Don't. I'll figure it out as we go. I had the experience of like watching a horror film as I slowly realized what the premise of this movie was. Because at the start, it just seems like a nice comedy with Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn. And then about 15 minutes into the watch, I was like, wait, does she not know who she is?
Yeah, she has.
Is he kidnapping her?
That's right. He calls her his slave very early on in the movie.
At least he's honest about it.
At least he's honest about it.
But here's the really embarrassing part. Lincoln was sitting there. He was like, kind of good.
It's kind of charming. Here's the thing. It's very, very problematic. The movie's kind of charming. It has stuff. Goldie Hawn is so good in the movie.
Who's Hector in this movie?
So he plays. So he's the guy that finds Goldie Hawn. He runs like a garbage skipper, and he does like a full minute long monologue where I'm not going to do the impression that he does, but he does a long kind of running bit of like how he found her, and is really, really good.
Oh, so,
It's giving me-
there's just so many there's a Hollywood subgenre of romances that involved memory loss, and I think they're all kind of problematic and kind of weird, like 50 First Dates, right?
50
like,
First Dates.
Yeah.
The Vow, that one where she loses her memory.
Yeah. And it's always a thing of like, what if a lady was an innocent and didn't know anything, and you could teach her whatever you like?
What is it? It's the
100%.
Born
yeah.
Stupid Yesterday.
Yeah.
Born Sexy Yesterday.
Born
Born Stupid Yesterday.
Although
Sorry,
Born
that's
Sexy
the
Yesterday may be my autobiography.
Born Stupid Yesterday is the way I wake up every morning. I have to listen to this podcast every morning to remember who I am.
Is that the excuse you're using?
you spend 2 hours, you're listening, you're like, right, I'm insufferable. And then you get along with your day.
Oh no.
Wore a fedora vest.
In 1988, Héctor Elizondo is in Beaches. In 89, he's in GP Cobb's Leviathan. And in 1990, Gary Marshall brings him back for the role of hotel manager in Pretty Woman. Shall I give a small, brief intro on any thoughts about Elizondo's 10 years? I reckon it's a pretty good 10.
Yeah.
Having not seen any of the movies between this and
You watched Overboard.
well, yeah.
I know you
to
said
be fair,
Overwatch.
I watched.
Sorry. That's different.
He's incredible in Overwatch.
He plays May.
I don't know if you guys, there's a really good article if you do want to do some further Hector research. I think it was AV Club did an amazing article. Did you read that? Obviously, a lot of the research came from that, where they went through all of his supporting roles, including his TV, and he talks about his experience on there. And I think that you can, I kind of went on there, did a similar thing. I sort of just mapped out in between. I was like, oh yeah, did a lot. If you haven't listened to the other Hector episodes, I think it's important to note that he came from a theatre background, which is interesting to me. Like, big theatre guy, big New York guy.
New York theatre guy.
And up until this point, he played a lot of villains. And I think that this is a turning point. And he even says in the AV Club interview that he misses playing villains, because like actors always love to play villains. But now I think because of this movie, Pretty Woman, which definitely is his breakout, made him like probably the most famous. He got a Golden Globe nomination for this movie. He became like a bit more well-known, and I think it kind of put him in a new castability of like a warmer character.
Yeah, it's really interesting going from American Gigolo and Detective Sunday, which is such a like, I guess like honest but like slimy performance.
Incredible.
To this, where he's like, when he first appeared in this movie, we'll get to it, but when he first appeared in this movie, I was like, oh, I can kind of see that. And then it was completely gone. It's like, oh no, he's just the most charming man in the world. He's just this friendly old guy.
It's clearly
he rules.
It's also fun because like having watched so many interviews, it's like, oh, this is it's closer to him.
Sure, yeah,
like
yeah.
not that that's like either better or worse acting, but you feel in his interviews this sort of like Barney energy coming more off him. He's You know, this character could call anyone in the cast a mensch, and it would be sick.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, I feel like you could go ahead and give us a bit of a introduction to the movie Pretty Woman.
Yes, so Pretty Woman is a 1990 romantic comedy directed by Gary Marshall, starring Richard Gere and Julia Roberts, in a modern update of the Cinderella tale, wherein a sex worker and a high-flying corporate raider think they have a purely transactional relationship, but after a week together, discover that they may have just fallen for each other. The movie skyrocketed Roberts' career from a smaller part in 1988's Mystic Pizza to the number 1A megawatt turn any movie into a hit powerhouse that we came to know after this film. Similarly, Gere's career, on a bit of a slump in the latter half of the 80s, was suddenly revitalized, settling into the white-haired hottie groove that would define his subsequent stardom. Inspired by the screwball comedies of the 30s, like It Happened One Night, His Girl Friday, and others, Marshall took a grim and realistic script by up-and-coming screenwriter J.F. Lawton, and together they stripped it of all grittiness, with one notable exception, to turn it into a light and fluffy souffle of a movie with one of the most charming and magnetic lead performances ever put to film at its gooey centre. Upon the movie's release, reviews were mixed to positive. Some critics had misgivings about the film's capitalistic stance, or lack thereof, like Karina Chicano of the New York Times thought that the movie wasn't a love story, it was a money story. Its logic depended on a disconnect between character and narrative, between money and value, and that made it not cluelessly traditional, but thoroughly postmodern. Others, however, did not object to the movie's idealization of property and designer brands, but rather had lascivious things to say about Julia Roberts' appearance. Owen Gleiberman, famously of the Entertainment Weekly, charmingly wrote, "You'd have to be blind or crazy or maybe just hormonally dead not to see that Julia Roberts is dazzlingly beautiful. At the same time, she's not beautiful in the way that movie stars are. Despite her one distinctive feature, the wide wax lips she shares with her brother Eric, her face has a Vogue cover model anonymity, and so does her acting."
Wax lips.
Yeah. Despite grotty older men discoursing in print magazines why Julia Roberts was mid, the film was an instant success, leading a field of movies that year to a worldwide box office of US $463 million. Here in Australia, it was number one at the box office for 12 consecutive weeks, and has become a truly iconic tentpole of the romantic comedy genre.
At the time, it was the fourth most successful film ever.
Ever made.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Can you imagine a rom-com today
No
coming
Hard
out?
Feelings is pretty good. Guys, if we all go to the cinema and go see No Hard Feelings right now,
I'm not saying-
which by the time this episode comes out, it certainly will not be still in cinemas.
Do we need to make No Hard Feelings the next?
It's pretty good.
I should watch it. I should stop talking shit about a movie. It just has such a buck wild premise that, you know what? Why am I throwing shade at it? I should hop on the no hard feelings
Absolutely.
bandwagon.
Overboard, no hard feelings. Let's go, gang.
Yeah, this is a really interesting film. It's one that's kind of famously, it comes up on a lot of lists of like movies whose script was way, way darker than the movie that we finally got. So I tried to get together like a little bit of a production history. It's also one, it's a film that has like a lot of myths around it. Like I looked at a lot of different websites to try and put
Julia
this
Roberts
together.
had to roll up a boulder up a hill every day.
Yeah. Hector Elizondo has his liver eaten out by a hawk every morning.
Richard Gere made a ship of Theseus. I don't know.
But yeah, there's a lot of myths around it and some contradicting stories, but this is the closest that I could get to like a concise production history where it's like, it started as a script by writer J.F. Lawton, as you said, titled 3000, and it was originally an attempt by him to move to a more serious script after failing to get any attention, writing in a bunch of words, in his own words, a bunch of unsold ninja flicks.
Yeah, so he worked for a B-movie company. He was like assistant editor for a B-movie company, and then he did a bunch of, because they were producing a bunch of ninja movies, and then he did like a fireman script. His only produced film before this, Cannibal Women in the Avocado Jungle of Death. Okay, that sounds good.
That sounds so much better than Pretty Woman.
I agree.
Okay, well, let's not be crazy.
You cast Hector Elizondo as, let's say, an avocado in that film. It's going to be incredible.
Sorry, the avocado jungle are all the trees avocado trees?
You
need to do research.
Don't worry. Tune into my new segment, Hextra Credit, where I'll be covering the canon. Actually, I won't. I'll be covering a TV thing. He was failing to sell a bunch of ninja flicks, and then he wrote a script about a one-legged lesbian stand-up called Red Shoes, which got him a little bit of attention. So he tried to somehow turn that script into this, which became 3000. The original script is famous for being much darker than the final film that we got, with the ending being Edward kicking Vivian out of a moving car and throwing the titular $3,000 after her, which is...
And she has tuberculosis?
No, her friend has TB.
Right.
Cat, I think, in the film.
From Just Shoot Me.
Yeah,
I'm so glad I get to talk about Just Shoot Me on this podcast finally.
She is so good.
Laura San Giacomo.
Love her so much in this film.
Incredible.
Script gained some attention early on and was developed at Sundance Institute before being brought by Aaron Mishan and Stephen Ruther, sorry if I'm mispronouncing those, at Vestron, which then collapsed and ended up in the hands of Disney when the company Vestron went bankrupt. Julia Roberts had already signed on to play Viv in this original script by the time it ended up in Disney's hands, and simultaneously the film What About Bob, which was well into pre-production with Gary Marshall directing, lost its lead, Michael Keaton, stalling the production. Worried about losing Gary Marshall to another studio, the script was offered to Marshall, who agreed to make it on the condition that he could rewrite it as a rom-com. While J.F. Lawton remains the only credited writer, multiple people apparently rewrote it, all getting the film closer to the final product that we have today. Filming began in July 24th, 1989, with Julia Roberts and Richard Gere in the starring roles. Gere apparently agreeing to do the film only because after a meeting with Gary Marshall and Julia Roberts, she slid a little piece of paper across the table that just had the words, "Please say yes" on it, which is absolutely adorable. Yeah. I kind of wanted to do that like brief production history because this is a really interesting example of a script that is like, it takes a village. It's a perfect It Takes a Village script.
Yeah.
There are so many people who rewrote it. There are so many steps along the way to get it what it is. It became better probably because of all of these sort of fails and near misses. It's so interesting that Gary Marshall, who has admitted later that he was going to leave Disney, only stayed on board because What About Bob stalled. There are so many interesting sort of near misses that made this film what it is today, which I love and appreciate hearing like how different a film can be from where it started and still end up being Disney's highest grossing film ever. Yeah. This outgrossed The Little Mermaid by like $100 million.
Yeah, wow.
Which came the year before, which is so sick.
Did you hear the thing about J.F. Lawton that I heard, which is that he was dyslexic?
I did not.
Yeah.
That's so nice. I'm dyslexic.
Yeah.
This guy can't tell his P's from Q's.
There's so many, I think we should get over with the alternate castings of this movie because the list is very long. And the thing is that it started with, because the original script, Julia Roberts was signed on, as you said, before it got turned into a rom-com.
Yeah.
So the original script that these actors were passing on was a darker tone, I think.
Much darker.
So some of them were kind of like, I don't know. Notable people include Michelle Pfeiffer, We have Winona Ryder, who was dismissed for being too young.
Yep.
Which is fair. She would have been really young. This would be the same year as Heathers, where she played high school. It would have been kind of like, I mean, she's probably the same age as Julia Roberts, but it would have just been like, same with Jennifer Connelly, who was considered too young. There was like a bunch of people that came up. You probably got a better list
Molly
than me.
Ringwald was also on that list.
The most
Winona Ryder.
The most exciting one for me was, for the Richard Gere part, was John Travolta, because John Travolta was certainly in the talks about it when it was the darkest script, but it's the same thing as American Gigolo.
I got Christopher,
And Christopher Reeve as well.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah,
Both?
yeah.
Right.
Christopher Reeve.
I mean,
The Venn diagram of the sex worker films, you know.
Yeah.
The leads,
You want Reeve? Yeah, you need
You
Reeve
get
or
these
Gere.
guys.
Well,
There's
Daniel
also-
Day-Lewis, Kevin Kline, Denzel Washington.
Daniel Day-Lewis would be
Sylvester
so funny.
Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, but Sly was like
Everything.
everything.
The reason that Julia Roberts was onto this film, though, is because Daryl Hannah turned it down. They were starring in Steel Magnolias together at the time. It was unreleased. Julia
That was
Roberts...
that was shooting.
It was
right?
shooting.
Yeah.
So Julia Roberts ended up getting an Oscar nomination for Steel Magnolias as well. She was very much an up-and-comer. Like, Mystic Pizza had happened and she got good reviews and that kind of thing, but she wasn't known. But Daryl Hannah turned it down because she felt that it was degrading to women, which, I mean, this original script might have been. And I mean, let's say a lot of things in the script are. But, you know, it just depends on where you're at and what you feel like representing on screen. So, sorry,
Depends
Daryl.
on what you feel.
I mean,
you
this
know?
is just such a happy accident that every person turned it down. Then it formed into a rom-com kind of around Julia Roberts as well, because she got to shape the role, and it's really clear because the best thing about this movie is Julia Roberts, and there's no like room for debate on that one. It's a star-making turn. She's very endearing. She's very good. She kind of brought in like a new wave of movie star. Like, I know that she's obviously incredibly traditionally good-looking person, stunningly beautiful.
Yes,
but
agreed.
I do think that what you read from those critics and that kind of thing, I think even then though, her having like curly hair, having dark hair,
it's kind of so funny to think
looking
about someone being like,
back now.
like,
But I think some people were saying they felt like she represented a different kind of beauty that people weren't used to seeing on the screen, which is interesting because now I think of Julia Roberts as like the quintessential movie star. So it's like just funny how you have these kind of, versions of what's considered beautiful. I mean, she would have come out of the 80s where the supermodel was, you know, all of those like Cindy Crawfords and blah, blah. Like it's
the Overton window of beauty like shifted, which she
still
something
very much fits into. So it's kind of
yeah,
like, well,
I know.
but
It's like
okie dokie.
You must remember this podcast, which I imagine. Did you listen to?
I sure did. Corinne Longworth, shout out.
There's a wonderful episode that sort of about Pretty Woman and Julia Roberts that sort of tracks her, like the backlash against Julia Roberts, and it's really sad and disgusting. Like it is this thing of like having a woman suddenly become, in like the words of producers at the time, the only woman who can sell a movie on Stardom alone, immediately led to not immediately, but pretty quickly just led to so much ire from like every women's magazine, producers. It was this exploded her career in such a way that immediately made her put a target on her back from anyone who thought that a woman shouldn't be able to sell a movie or
still
how a
happens.
woman should sell a movie.
This still happens.
100%.
It's happening right now.
It's exactly why I said that there are people online right now being like, Margot Robbie, we don't really need to talk about these people, but like Margot Robbie's mid, and it's like, what are you talking
I mean,
about?
you have like someone gets so famous so quickly, they're beloved very briefly, and then the internet and media turns against them. So it happened to Anne Hathaway, it's happening to Rachel Zegler right now, it's happening
to Jennifer Lawrence.
Jennifer Lawrence in a huge way. She disappeared. Anne Hathaway also disappeared for a
Go
while.
see No Hard Feelings. Go see it.
Yeah.
It's good.
But these movie stars who are so celebrated, then it's just like inevitable, and it's so awful because it doesn't really happen to men. It's a very much a misogynist thing, and the phenomenon of it is very weird. It's like they're the golden girl, and then everything they do becomes just completely like, I don't know.
Jennifer Lawrence is actually a really interesting comparison because they both became such megastars so young, had so much like very early Oscar nods. J-Law, of course, winning it.
Yep.
And then Julia getting nominated for this film.
Crazy that absolutely deserved that she got nominated. But it was so bizarre. It's so awesome.
And it's very similar in these like careers that exploded, gained a huge amount of popularity. It's certainly true that media turned against Jennifer Lawrence, but I feel like Julia Roberts maybe had it even worse to a certain degree. Like it was a more immediate switch. I feel like J-Law had a little bit of a softer landing. Maybe that's a change in the times, and also hopefully it's a slightly better comment on the way we react to women becoming successful. But it is a very similar trajectory either way, which is A bit grim.
Yeah, I think it took until Julia Roberts kind of did Erin Brockovich for people to take her seriously as an actor again, because she smashes that out of the ballpark, no questions asked. But I think there was a huge lull in her career between this and that, and it's 10 years, maybe 11 years between.
Yeah, I mean, she works a lot between now and then, but she's not back in like the kind of Oscar-y conversation. I don't think. I mean, Runaway Bride is the revisitation of this movie, but what if it was worse? Should we jump straight into the cinema experience of Pretty Woman?
I think we should indeed.
Let's dive in.
We start with the Touchstone Pictures logo. We love the Touchstone Pictures logo. We see it is... Sorry, Seamus just very quietly shaking his head. It is revealed that this is a Gary Marshall film. One of the most exciting things that can ever pop up on screen. It's when you know you're in for a good time that you don't want to think about too hard. A magician is showing rich people tricks. I think we should bring back magicians at parties.
I love close-up magic. That's my first note. I love close-up magic. I love seeing it on camera. My note on this is like, it's so satisfying to look at. It's such a great way to open the film. It sets up the whole thing about money, but it ends in the stupidest way, because it's like it's a very well performed like little piece of sleight of hand with the coins. It's very satisfying to look at. And then it ends with him pulling a coin from behind someone's ear, which is the most dog shit trick in the world. It's like, don't incorporate that into your act, buddy. You clearly can do better work. Anyway, I enjoyed the opening of this movie.
This is a side note about magic at parties, because I have a friend who went through a phase about a year ago of whenever he had a party, he would hire a magician and not tell anyone. And so we would be there and this guy would suddenly come up and just start doing a magic trick. And it happened at one of the parties that we had. So I was suddenly like, we're having like a Christmas party, and I was looking around, there's this magician doing, and I could just see, and I immediately was like, shout out to you, Adam Connolly, because I was just like, this seems like an Adam move, and it was. And now he brings him to all of his gigs because he's a musician. He just has he does these endurance gigs where he plays for 9 hours straight, and it's awesome. It has like different, it's a noise band. It's very experimental, but he still has this magician in the crowd just walking around, and he pays him to do it, and he just always has his magician.
That's genuinely quite awesome.
Why wasn't I invited?
Sorry, I've never heard someone embarrass themselves so quickly on a podcast of just you being like, I love close-up magic. Have
you listened to our podcast? What are you talking about?
That was one of the least embarrassing things you said, because I also love magicians, and I love illusionists, and I love I like even bigger stuff. I love the Las Vegas.
Is there a difference between a magician and an illusionist?
Yes.
Lincoln.
Think about David Copperfield.
He's what?
An illusionist. Is this a joke?
He made the goddamn Statue of Liberty disappear, Lincoln.
Yeah, is that not magic?
It's illusion. Just keep to this mic so hard.
Richard Gere, we see him. No, first we see Jason Alexander. He's a lawyer. He's hosting this party.
Before he was cast in Seinfeld.
Yes, before he was cast in Seinfeld. Then we see Richard Gere on the phone. It's to his girlfriend, but it sounds like it's to his secretary. It doesn't go well. He's kind of looking down at the party. We reveal he's like a high-powered lawyer. He's a corporate raider.
He's a business guy.
And Jason Alexander is the lawyer. And they're getting into business stuff together. He talks to an old flame, which is a line that I really, really like, and is kind of like a bit of a Gary Marshall special of, when we were dating, did you speak to my secretary more than me? And then the lady says, she was one of my bridesmaids.
Good stuff.
That's really good stuff.
It's good.
I'm currently on board the movie.
Absolutely. Well, let's see when you hop off.
When I go overboard?
Amy Yazbek comes over. I think she's playing Alexander's wife. I think she's really, really good in the movie. She's very little to do. Tells Jason Alexander that Gere is leaving. Alexander tries to stop him, but Gere steals Jason Alexander's car and drives away.
You know what? I hate Gere already.
Yeah.
Right off the bat. I know we're meant to.
Yeah.
The problem is I stay this way the entire film.
No,
Yes,
I agree.
I
It's a
think
huge
that's the
flaw
problem
in the
with the
film.
movie.
He's just so
beat
grumpy.
him up.
He's so grumpy.
He's got the most punchable face in this movie. And it's the same face in the last movie. I didn't want to punch it then. Smarmy little shit.
We cut to the Hollywood sign. The King of Wishful Thinking by Go West plays. What an absolute scorcher of a song. I love that song. We see the title sequence happens over shots of Los Angeles, the city that famously never sleeps. And we get Hector Elizondo as the hotel manager. We love that, Bill.
Great.
Then we cut to Julia Rops getting dressed. What did I just say?
Julia
Julia
Rops.
Rops.
No, that's her nickname. Roppy.
Julia Roberts.
Roppy McJulia.
Is getting dressed. We also get the casting is by Diane Crittenden. The music is by James Newton Howard, famous composer. And the costume designer is Marilyn Vance. Let me just read to you Marilyn Vance's career.
Marilyn
Just
Vance.
a snippet of it. The Breakfast Club,
Nice.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Die Hard, Predator, The Untouchables, Pretty in Pink.
Okay.
Perfect.
Pretty damn good.
Put her on the list.
So Julia Roberts, we see her. She's walking the streets, and a girl has died that she knew in the apartment building. And Hank Azaria,
Yeah, it's Hank Azaria.
is trying to control the crime scene. Only scene he gets is a real. Will take you out of the movie for a second and be like, why is Hank Azaria there?
He's also great.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Hank Azaria has a butt ton of screen presence. You really expect him to come back.
Yeah.
He's got 3 lines.
Yeah.
This would be
And
like...
he's got like a really like light touch, which can be like he's doing something very serious, but his light touch kind of keeps the tone of the movie up. Like
very, very dark moment, this as well, because what Hank Azaria is doing is he's running a crime scene where this woman has been found dead in a dumpster, and there's 2 people coming up taking photos, and he goes, "What are you, journalists? This is so disrespectful." And then the guys go, "No, we're tourists," and they just snap a photo of it. It is fucked up. It feels like it is definitely a holdover from that original 3000 script.
Yeah, I think there's such an interesting thing when you see something that is taken, that seems to be at least taken from that original script, and how it like judders with the movie, and the movie kind of like just massages it.
Yeah,
and goes
Hank
along.
Azaria is the only thing that keeps that scene from dominating the entire
Yeah,
next half hour.
So the same with her getting ready, though, go to her apartment. That's where you see the pictures on her wall where she's scribbled out her boyfriend obviously had a breakup. We see her try and go to get the rent money, where she's hidden it in the top of the toilet, where and then she
The upper deck.
realizes it's not there.
it's not there. So
And also, we need to talk about just how funny it is that she's wearing a wig when she has the best hair ever.
that wig is one of the worst things I've ever experienced in my
Yeah.
life.
So she puts on, people who haven't seen Pretty Woman, you should probably go and watch it before you listen to this podcast, but she
Pass.
puts on a platinum bob wig, and like I think it's kind of meant to look cheap. Like she's meant
It
to look
is,
like
like,
she's in
yeah.
disguise. But there's a point later on where it looks like Richard Gere seems surprised by the wig when he holds her hair, and I'm like, it could not be more of a wig if it tried. Like it's anyway.
I took that as him touching it, and it's got a wet texture.
I think it's definitely meant to be that he
I
realizes
don't
it's a
think
wig.
that's the read.
like when Frodo first touches Shelob's webs.
Exactly like that.
Shelob has such a beautiful wig in that movie.
What I like about, you know me, I love a montage and we get to know a character, and her getting ready to a song in her
Absolutely.
apartment where we see pictures of her. We know this character's going through a breakup. We know she's struggling with money. We know that she has got to escape through the fire escape to get out to avoid a landlord or a we
She's
get
poor.
everything we know. We're she's the opposite of Richard Gere right now.
My only note on that scene was that I want to live in a place with a fire escape. I would never use
okay.
the regular stairs.
You can just chuck a ladder on your balcony, right?
Yeah, I feel like actually that would be available to you. You do live on
I
the second
think that
floor.
would kill me. I need a fire escape.
Yeah.
I need it more readily secured.
So Julia goes to the Blue Banana Club, which,
Christmas
as far
idea.
as I can tell, is a painting sex club. It is both a sex club and also everyone needs to paint the walls. Because the first shot of the Blue Banana Club is similar to an American Gigolo. It's like not a lot of extras in there. It's kind of empty. And 3 people are literally painting the wall. And I was like, I guess that's kind of part of that's the juice of it.
It could be a really great way of pulling people out of like K-holes and like when they're
Yeah,
freaking out
it's
too
just
much.
hand them a paint roller.
I reckon that would fully work for
That
me.
looks fun.
I know. They're kind of wearing kind of slinky outfits and they're all painting. Like that sounds like something that someone would design for like Newtown, like new mums or something.
Yeah,
to
it's
be
like one
we're
of
gonna
those-
play loud music and you
those
can
like-
all wear your fun outfit and then we're just going to paint someone's wall.
It's like those art and wine things.
Yeah, exactly.
It would also be an extremely clever way of...
Uh-oh.
No, so you market it as like a bridesmaids. Have fun, you have some wine and paint thing, but really what you're doing is just running a painting service.
Renovating
Okay.
the club.
Now here's the pitch.
Here's the pitch.
Two ladies down on their luck start a painting as
Like it's a renovation service,
and
but
all
it's,
they have to do is
they're
buy
all
some
drunk.
cheap, buy some cheap bottles of red, and then they invite, like they start with their friends, but then it grows and grows and grows. It's like Fight Club.
And they do do it by tricking other people into thinking that it's like an activity, but really they're just renovating houses at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a pitch for a movie or how
Or a
a
reality
business.
TV show.
or our next podcast.
Really great podcast content. People painting walls.
It doesn't matter. We'll be making so much money off the renovations.
So Julia goes looking for Laura San Giacomo and accuses her of buying drugs with the rent money that she stole out of the toilet. They kind of chat about how rough they have it. The line, "Don't you want to get out of here?" And Laura San Giacomo says, "Where? Where do you want to go?" Which I think is really nice. Sets exactly kind of the tone of the two of them. Should we talk about Laura now?
Yeah.
She's so fucking good in
She's
this.
Great
incredible.
movie.
It's like the first time you see her, she's wearing these little flip-up glasses that look so steampunk and cool, and I was like, I need
Did you
those.
say steampunk and cool in the same sentence just then?
Yeah, I love close-up magic.
I love close-up magic and goggles.
Yeah, she's great. I mean, I mainly know her from a great television series called Just Shoot Me, which stars David Spade and her.
You're a
And
huge Spade head.
And yeah, it's a 90s show set in a magazine, like a Vogue-esque magazine. And she's great in that. And she's also in Veronica Mars. And because the guy from Veronica Mars who plays the dad, Keith Mars, is also in Just Shoot Me. And we can trace everything back to Just Shoot Me.
Feels to me like Laura San Giacomo should have a like HBO show now.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like she needs, because is it her that she was on NCIS later in her and she did like a lot of TV.
Yeah, heaps
and I'm
of
like,
TV.
give her, she's one of the detectives in True Detective, or
No,
give
put her in High Rollers.
I don't know what that is.
It's our show
Oh,
where we have drunk women renovate houses.
they need to
High
smoke weed
rollers.
now.
High
They need to
rollers.
smoke weed.
High
They need to smoke
rollers.
weed.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
pitch
yeah.
is developed. I just want to briefly talk about Carlos in this scene, who's
Absolutely.
their like drug dealer, aggressive, like force of antagonism that's clearly from an earlier script character, who is wearing one of the worst outfits I've ever seen in a movie.
I don't think I remember his outfit.
He's wearing a sleeveless green collar shirt and a fedora. And he looks like me. He looks like how I would have dressed up to go to a party when I was 15.
Circa 2012.
Yeah, really awful outfit.
So then Julia Roberts and Laura San Giacomo are working the street. Julia Roberts takes off her hat, and this is when I wrote, oh my God, that wig. Then we see
The rest of the outfit, pretty fire.
Absolutely.
Those thigh-high boots, that little, like, the cutout dress.
The little ring.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, a very actually bought on Hollywood Boulevard, I believe. Like not like a very put together outfit, like a cheap one bought off the street
Nope,
specifically.
fully designed.
Interesting.
That is the other thing about Marilyn Vance that I learnt, is that every single item of clothing they like made. There's like a couple, like a pair of pants here or a jacket for Jason Alexander or something. Everything else is like fully constructed and designed.
Interesting. I read that one. Well, here's the thing. I've read a lot of facts about this movie, and some of which I've been contradicted by other facts I've read.
Yeah, that's the interview I read with Marilyn.
I
Vance
believe.
said.
I would believe you over it because there is a lot of like.
Yeah.
I think my favorite shot of the movie is when you see her zipping up her in the front. Again, why do I love? Am I such a fucking basic bitch? I just love a montage where I get to see a character. But when she pulls up her thing with the safety pin,
Yes.
and you just know immediately. You see this like getting ready. Montages are usually kind of glamorous, and this one is just the opposite. Yeah, she's just like struggling to get
Yeah.
a safety pin up for her thigh-high boots.
It's good stuff.
It's good.
We do see Richard Gere at that point driving up in Jason Alexander's Lotus Esprit. How do we feel about the Lotus Esprit, everyone?
All
Pretty
right,
good
car guy, how do you reckon?
I love the Lotus Esprit. It was one of the first cars that I would get in a car game that I played on Xbox in like 2006.
Interesting. That car was a third choice. They both they had sponsorships turned down by both Ferrari and Porsche, not wanting to be associated with sex work.
And yeah, that is a complete failure on their part because this movie made almost $500 million.
100%. And also, I mean, I don't love the Lotus Esprit to be honest, but I think it is more interesting that it's that than it is a Ferrari.
Yeah.
It also makes more sense with it being Jason Alexander's car.
Yeah, that I think it's weirdly accidentally an incredibly good character choice.
Yeah.
So Richard Gere is struggling to figure out how the manual works. The car keeps stopping and starting. He's looking for Beverly Hills. And I wrote here, he does seem to be a complete dipshit. Like he seems to be the dumbest guy ever. He stops. talks to Julia Roberts, asks for directions. It's a wonderful scene. She gets in the car and is like, I will take you to Beverly Hills where you need to go. They flirt in the car. Richard Gere says, "What's your name?" Sorry, I haven't said Julia Roberts' character's name is Vivian. I need to start doing that more. She says, "What do you want it to be?" Julia directs Gere towards his hotel. She talks about the car. She loves cars. She grew up with a bunch of boys who used to take old American muscle and like soup it up. And then Gere says, "My first car was a limousine." Really good.
Really? You thought that was good?
Yeah, I really like that.
My
he's
continuous
unlikable.
I know he's meant to be unlikable at this point in the film. I just had nothing to grip onto. I feel like I need a kernel of something to like in this character.
Think he's quite good in this movie. I don't think he Again, yeah, I
Maybe
think the character is quite unlikable, and I agree with you. I don't think it kind of fully resolves that at the end, so that he becomes like suddenly likable.
I just don't have I agree that it's probably a charming performance, but there is just so much I just find like sour milk in my mouth watching this fucking guy.
Don't mind that he's unlikable, because I think it takes away that really could have been incredibly awkward Prince Charming thing. You know what I mean? He could have been the most like, I think that if she has to teach him something, I think if he came in and was like, I'm the greatest guy ever, like I think that it would be very much like a downer, like it would be that really typical storyline that we would expect to see from a Cinderella-esque story like this, where it kind of, I think that she has to teach him something, and this is basically like how to be kind of like, she's so likable, and it works.
Yeah, it works because like the end of the movie is him doing what is the first act of Cinderella, right? It's like that is the like, that's him like going to save her, and then she says, I save you right back. It's like, that's him. He becomes Prince Charming over the course of the movie, which is kind of, I mean, I don't
mind that.
I'm not really gonna be here to say that this movie is not problematic. Of course, it very much is.
Of course it is, but I think it could have been way more problematic. And I genuinely think that its depiction of sex work, I think it's aged better than I thought it would have, because I think that back in the 80s or 90s, every sex work depiction would usually be probably what the original script was, which is 3000, which is like, you got to get her out of here. Like, but she actually is like, they kind of treat the character Vivian and her friend with a lot of respect. Like she's often like actually the smartest person in the room, or like people have to kind of like, I think that they do put that in somewhat of a better light. Obviously it's not perfect, of course. But I think in terms of how I was expecting the conversation about sex work to be in 2023 versus Pretty Woman, I think I was somewhat like, oh, okay. I know it technically, I think a lot of the criticism at the time was that it glamorizes sex work. That was a huge amount of criticism for the film.
Right, which is
whereas
funny to think about now.
I'm kind of like, it's interesting because I think that now we talk about sex work in a way that we, try to legalize it and make it decriminalized so people can, it's a valid form of work, and that's sort of the conversation. That's how I feel about sex work, and that's what I would like to see represented more. I think I read a great article from sex workers doing a reflection of Pretty Woman and how it kind of affected their life. And they were saying, obviously, it's a fantasy. That's kind of the point. Like, it's Cinderella, but they said that they don't think it was that damaging for a reputation of sex workers, because I think that the other stuff where it was like, you're addicted to, which still isn't this film, like addicted to hard drugs, and you have to be on the streets and you must be saved by this guy.
In the original script, she was addicted to cocaine, and part of the deal for the 3000 was that she had to stay clean for the entire week.
Yes.
And I believe she failed.
The story came from J.F. Lawton working in a donut shop, I think, very early on, and he on Hollywood Boulevard, and he got to know a few of the sex workers that were working that strip, and asked this lady told this story of like, this guy took me to Vegas for a week and he paid me like $3,000, and he was like, and how did that affect you? Was it like hard to get away from him? And she was like, no, it was fine.
No, I went to Vegas, got $3,000, came home with a new hat.
But I think obviously in this time we're dealing with people who are working on this, like as the term is streetwalker, I think was the term back then. I don't know if that are working literally on the street, as opposed to kind of how things would work today, I imagine. I'm sure there are still people who work the streets, but I think it is important to have some representation of like that. It's probably a dangerous job.
Of course.
Famously a dangerous job.
Yeah, famously a dangerous
But I think
job.
if every depiction is that, then it's boring. I think it's kind of interesting that they had even somewhat of a positive kind of reflection of it. I don't know.
I fully agree with that. My issue isn't even the depiction of sex work, which I think is complicated. My issue is the depiction of Richard Gere and I want to punch him.
So Gere at that moment, maybe apropos, asks her how much she makes. She says $100 an hour. He says $100 an hour, that's stiff. Julia reaches into his pants, says no, but it's got potential. They arrive back at Gere's hotel. Julia goes to leave, catch a bus, but he invites her up. Julia is shocked by how expensive everything is at the hotel.
Did you say that she drove the car?
Sorry, I forgot to say
Because
she
that's a
does
really
start driving
important
the
part.
car.
He
It's a good
lets
bit.
her drive the car.
He demands she drives
and
the
she's
car.
like, she doesn't say you better hold on tight, Spider Monkey. That's Twilight. But like she
Says that full
something-
line. I remember that line in this movie. It's
she
good.
says something like that.
You better hold
Speeds
tight,
away.
Spider Monkey. Is that the line? I
Yeah,
forgot
you
that's
better
when
hold on.
Bella is
Yeah.
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 God, what
No,
a
it's
classic movie.
We will be
Julia to
doing that.
Richard in
Gotta
this scene.
do it. So you better hold tight, Spider Monkey, and they arrive back at Gere's hotel. They surprise a fancy couple by an elevator. Julia Roberts being concerned about pantyhose that she's not wearing, and then Richard Gere says the line that I really like. First time in an elevator, which is really good.
He makes her put a jacket on before she walks in though, because he
Yes.
has some level of kind of. But then she ends up just being like
Playing
"Fuck
it up.
this, playing it up, which is great too.
And
love
what I
that.
wrote at this point is the reason this movie works, I think, is because every side character in every scene is like, holy shit, that's Julia Roberts.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the special power, I think. of this
What does
movie.
that wife say to her husband? She's like, try not to stare, dear. Or
Yeah.
something like that. Like, close your mouth, dear.
Yeah,
or
close
something
your
like
mouth,
that.
dear.
Yeah.
This is the first time where Richard Gere tells Julia Roberts to stop fidgeting.
Is that true? Yeah.
Yeah, this
Does it happen more than that time?
It happens a lot, and I've written it down every time. Here's another thing. It's really condescending, and
It is.
It's a nail down the
It is
chalkboard
the
of my brain.
exact thing that we were talking about of like, it is the thing of like, what if a lady was really, really needed your help and wasn't classy like you are, and the end of the movie's like, and that's good.
Yeah.
It's Pygmalion.
It's
So,
Pygmalion.
or My Fair Lady, whatever your favorite version of Pygmalion is. But I think that kind of stop fidgeting, condescending stuff, it doesn't bother me because that's in his character because it's a class thing. And I think it's actually a critique. Like in the end, we're more on her side this film than we are his.
I agree. I
think
agree
so.
that we're more on her side in this film.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
They
And she
get-
also she is incapable of sitting on a chair, which I love.
Yeah.
This movie is Julia Roberts sitting on different objects.
Not just Julia Roberts. It's also Sam.
it's also who?
Sorry.
Richard Gere.
No. Sorry.
Edward is his name. Laura San Giacomo.
Yes. Sorry. Sam.
Kit is her character.
Yeah. Kit. Sorry. It's also Kit. Kit sits on objects
It's also
as well.
Sam. He said that with such certainty.
is
It's also Sam.
I always said, yeah. She just looks like a Sam to me.
It's what if the most beautiful women you've ever seen in your
Just
life
sat on
down.
things. No, but sat on not chairs.
It's a great character choice, though. I like it.
They get into Richard Gere's penthouse hotel room. He immediately sits down at a desk and starts going through mail. I found that was I was so like, what are you like? How anyway?
Hang on, this is before email. That makes sense. He's a working guy.
Yeah, I know that's what it's there to establish, but you're like, I'm inviting this person up to my hotel room. Just a second, doll. And then
Gere's rude.
he's very rude. It sucks.
But that's his character. That's
I
what he
know.
does with his girlfriends
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
They
yeah,
speak
yeah.
to his secretary over him. Like,
I
he
It is
know,
his
doesn't.
character.
I don't mind that.
No. I don't.
I think
I don't
it's
actually
good.
mind that.
Sorry.
It's good actually. Julia checks out the room. It has a balcony. Gere never goes out there. He says, "I'm afraid of heights." They talk about Gere is a planner in all things in his life, and Vivian is a fly by the seat of your pants type of gal. Then Julia Roberts brings out a buffet of safety, a selection of condoms from which Gere can choose. But Gere doesn't really want to have sex at that moment. He just wants to talk for a little bit. Julia Roberts guesses he's a lawyer, and then champagne arrives. I've written here, Gere is so sleepy in this movie. He really is. He's got like Duchovny energy.
He's got big
He does
Duchovny
have
energy,
Duchovny
actually.
energy.
But I don't think that doesn't grate me as much as it grates you. I'm like, yeah, he's tight. He's an insomniac. He never sleeps. Maybe that's why I relate.
I love sleepy characters.
Yeah, it's true.
But he doesn't quite have the irreverence that the sleepy characters
doesn't go-
I have.
As much.
Yeah, he doesn't.
That's really
he
what
doesn't
does it
yawn and do karate.
That's a real problem.
It would be great if he did. If Gere yawned and did karate, it would be a better movie.
If he was Kakashi.
If he was Kakashi.
Sorry,
Okay, actually,
sorry.
you recast Kakashi in this movie. I'm back on board.
Absolutely not.
Julia comes.
Stop it.
Julia
Both
comes
of
into
you
his
stop.
room and he's just like,
Julia
Your
Roberts
Sharingan.
takes her boots off and starts walking around. She drinks a whole bit of champagne immediately. Richard Gere says you should try a strawberry. It brings out the flavor in the champagne. This is the start of the running theme of absolutely shut up. The running theme of like Richard Gere showing her something that is like higher class.
Yeah. I just didn't get it.
You're
She
trying
spells-
to come back.
I'm sorry.
You're trying to come
I'm
back
still
to the pod,
thinking of
but I can
Kakashi.
see in your eyes you're not listening to me. I know you're not listening.
Oh, like you have some sort of ocular jutsu you can see in her eyes.
I'm going to tear you both.
Instead of
limb
reading
from
mail,
limb.
he's reading his book. Sorry, by Jiraiya. Sorry.
It's
Anyway.
revealed that Richard Gere
I
doesn't
think
drink.
That is
Sorry.
important, though. I think that she sculls the champagne. It's great. She doesn't like it, which I have definitely related to in so many occasions of my life.
Yeah, champagne, yuck.
Where,
I
no,
love
champagne's
champagne.
delicious now, but I think like when people give you really fancy things you don't understand, you're like, the fuck is this? Like,
I love to be given something that I don't know how to eat at a restaurant. I think I now delight in it. Of like, you're like, I don't. Do I attack this with a fork? Which bits of this are edible? Love that.
Yeah.
Richard Gere, Edward doesn't drink. He pays Julia for the whole night. And this is when I read. This is a male fantasy of what if I was a very rich and gentle guy and could fix a woman's problem by being rich and hot. And also, she doesn't know the things that I know, so I have to teach her. It's a kind of infantilization of women.
100%.
So then Richard Gere catches Julia Roberts flossing her teeth in the bathroom. Julia Roberts, so good. She says you shouldn't neglect your gums, which is really, really good. That scene was originally in the Lawton script, but she was doing cocaine.
100%.
And that was part of the 3,000 that it ends up being.
Yeah.
There's a really good line at the end of this scene where Richard Gere says, which kind of maybe might be from the original script, but it's Richard Gere saying, very few people surprise me. And Vivian says, yeah, well, you're lucky. Most of them shock the hell out of me.
Yeah.
That's good character work. That's so good. Cut to later in the night.
I just say it's a really good ad for flossing because she's got a really great smile with perfect
does have
teeth.
a
So
wonderful
I was like,
smile.
fuck, I should really floss more. Like, thanks, Julia. That's what
love
I took away
flossing.
from this movie. I went, flossing good.
Maybe it's time to floss.
I floss.
Flossing.
I floss a lot.
And also bathe. I need to I need a huge, sorry.
Okay, wow.
Bathe in a bath is what I mean. I don't bathe in a bath very often. And what I need is like a
stop
huge
bathing
bubble.
in that
a bathtub
fountain,
that's
Lincoln.
like 7 foot wide.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no. I spend a lot of time in the bathtub.
Yeah,
I fucking love the bathtub.
I love baths and I love flossing. I'm essentially Pretty Woman.
I also like flossing.
Hell yeah,
Just
dude.
so we know, guys, good
You're
hygiene,
outside-
bathing.
You're
I don't know.
outside of it.
I haven't brushed my teeth in 6 years. Later in the night, Julia Roberts is drunk watching I Love Lucy, which is interesting because Gary Marshall wrote for the Lucy show.
Yes.
She's like, I never saw this episode.
Hang on, I just have to go back
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
quickly, right back to when. Sorry, you could be like
To where
what?
we all
where
began.
Richard Gere is
Speed.
looking for Beverly Hills, and he asks a guy, and he says, "Is this Beverly Hills?" And he says, and this homeless man says, "Oh yeah, that's Sylvester Stallone's house." You know that bit?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
and that man
that's
is
Gary Marshall
Yes.
doing it up. So that's just a cute thing. He did the ADR of that, but also that line is really funny. I think he delivers
good
it
line.
quite well. Anyway,
Yeah, it's the house from Barbarian, and he's like, yeah, that's Sly Stallone's house. That's good. Julia Roberts gives a wonderful kind of like laughing performance as she's a bit drunk, but all I could think about is how bad her wig is.
Gary Marshall is tickling her feet outside that shot.
Oh,
Yeah.
So then Julia Roberts tries to
My
seduce Gere. As she starts to go down on him, it keeps cutting to I Love Lucy, which I thought was kind of an interesting directorial choice. I don't think that's necessarily saying anything.
It intercuts between I Love Lucy and Gere looking progressively sleepier.
Yeah, so Gere gives such a contented sigh that he's like, well, end of a day's work. Later, he is having a shower post-coitus. He sees Julia Roberts' wig is off, finds her sleeping in the bed, sees her hair, and then gets back to work. Cut to Héctor Elizondo. He's walking through the lobby hotel saying hi to everyone. That's such a good way to... It's like a 4-second shot, and it's a like wide tracking shot as he just walks through a hotel lobby and is like, how you going? How you going? And then we don't see him for another 5 minutes.
But you do see him
This is a
notice
manager.
Julia.
That's later.
Well,
Gere-
in any case, this is 39 minutes and 19
Oh,
seconds.
I think you missed him in the
think you
first
missed
one.
him.
He actually appeared because it's a
My
big
equations!
Wide, it's a big wide shot of the hotel lobby, and I was like, that's Elizondo.
no.
And he's just like walking through and saying hi to everyone, which is a wonderful way to introduce
That's
a
a
character.
great way, and I'm really bummed out.
Almost
I
as good
missed
as a
it.
montage with the song.
I would pay good money for a montage of Hector Elizondo walking through a hotel lobby saying hi to everyone.
Yeah, I would too.
With Everybody Wants to Rule the World playing, I guess.
Perfect.
Gere is up in the morning drinking orange juice, talking to Jason Alexander on the phone. They're talking about a deal that they're kind of making with Robert Morse. Not Robert Morse, that's someone else, but Morse is the last name.
I think Jason Alexander is actually very good in this movie.
Jason Alexander's amazing in everything he does. He's a really good actor.
He's also the devil in this movie.
Yeah.
He plays
Awful.
the worst possible guy
It's
ever.
a
He
but you
does
like
that-
him.
It's a
He does that in, I mean, even his most beloved role, he plays an awful person. He plays awful incredibly well.
Yeah.
George Costanza, obviously less awful than this character, but he's still like insufferable. That is his entire character.
Yeah, I think
arc.
he's doing an excellent job. An excellent job that would be thankless. It is a phenomenally skeezy, oily performance.
Ugh.
It's like a
He does it in so many films. He's this kind of character in Shallow Hal as well. Like he does it in a bunch of movies.
I had completely forgotten that Jason Alexander is in Shallow Hal.
I did not watch Shallow
I
Hal.
gotta watch it. I gotta pop that bad
Yeah,
boy back on.
I reckon that film's aged beautifully.
I reckon it's aged.
I reckon it's
like
perfect.
a fine wine,
It
like
was-
a nice Chablis.
It was fucking problematic when it came out, so I loved. Oh god, I can't even with that. But yeah, I remember thinking he plays these roles a lot, and he's really talented at it. By all accounts, I think he's meant to be a really nice guy. So I don't know, he's just a good actor.
Oh, you'd hope so.
Yeah, just a good actor.
So Julia Robert quizzes Gere about what he does. He says he buys companies that are in trouble. He buys the debt of that company and then sells it off in little parts. Explains that he's buying a company for $1 billion. Vivian says, $1 billion? You must be really smart, huh?
This is the breakfast scene, right?
Yeah, this is the breakfast.
She's
scene.
sitting on the table.
Yeah, she's sitting on the table. And did anyone else notice that her croissant turns into a pikelet?
No, Seamus, I didn't.
I'm not the only one. Because not only does it turn into... So she's eating a croissant.
That is, I apologize to make fun of you for that is the most ADHD sentence.
Oh, you're detail-oriented. No, she's eating a croissant. It cuts to Gere. It cuts back to her. She's eating a pikelet. It cuts to Gere. It cuts back to her. The pikelet has less bites taken out of it. It's one of the worst pieces of continuity I've ever seen in a movie. And there are online theories that it's a magic pikelet.
That is bad.
It's just...
I hate you for saying it. I hate you for revealing this information to me.
It's really jarring. Like, it is a full croissant, and then it cuts back, and it's immediately a pikelet.
She picks up another thing.
No, there's no...
takes a bite of the
it's
croissant, she puts
clearly,
it down,
there's no
pikelet.
time... She would have... No, because she's using two hands. She's using two hands. And
Continuity.
it's barely a second.
Dropped the ball on that one.
Yes, the continuity dropped a ball on that
I
one.
like that she doesn't sit on a chair.
She
Although
continues to
he
refuse
makes
to
her
use
sit on a
chairs.
chair. Yeah.
Yes,
And then
he
she
does.
sits like
Yeah.
she sits how I sit on chairs in that bit, which is
Yeah.
like leg up. And I'm like,
yeah.
am I Julia Roberts?
I think you might be.
I think I'm Vivian.
Which is interesting because there is a interview...
Online fan theory about Julia Roberts sitting on a table.
There is an interview with Julia Roberts that is extremely skeezy and unpleasant and talks about her stretching out over
yeah.
Yeah, it's a really horrible interview. It is referenced in the You Must Remember This podcast I was talking about earlier that talks about how she stretches out when she sits down. And one of the comments in it is that the podcast made is like, no interviewer has ever commented on how much space a man takes up when he sits down.
exactly.
And
Richard
then
Gere comes in, spreads out his legs, puts an arm over
and then
someone,
says,
and then
sit down.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
another thing of Gere being like, it's another moment that I really don't like Gere's character.
That's
You're not
good.
meant to like him.
That's
I know
good
you're
because
not
by the
meant
end
to-
of the movie, he's changed.
I don't.
Isn't that exciting?
He just keeps. He doesn't change. Anyway, keep going.
He overcomes his fear of heights for her.
He does.
So Julia Robert then helps Gere put on a tie before he goes to kind of a big meeting. I read here that it's kind of interesting that the chemistry that they have is not so much this like sizzling like, oh my God, they're so hot for each other. It's much more like they're like an older couple that's been together. Like immediately they have this kind of sense of like,
Sure.
oh, they've already been together for a little while. They have this kind of like familiarity with each other.
Yeah, when she's trying to seduce him not seduce him, just get her job done in the first scene where the first night. It's pretty like uncomfortably like he's like off. He doesn't seem that keen.
He's awkward.
He just wants to hang
Yeah.
out. Like I think it works in that way, and then I think he just kind of goes, all right.
Yeah.
He's like, I'll turn off I Love Lucy.
Yeah. Good, let's turn off our lovely.
Let's
I
do
love this
that.
episode.
I don't
No,
even know
he just mutes it.
He does mute it. That's right. He's like,
he mutes
leave
it and
on.
switches it to subtitles.
But I think it's obviously we've talked about the choice of having Lucille Ball, that kind of screwball like icon, funny,
Yes.
like that obviously is a reflection of Vivian's character.
Yes, which
as
is
well.
like the progenitor of where this ended up.
Yeah, and Gary Marshall obviously paying a bit of tribute
To himself.
to his own work.
Richard Gere asks how she knows how to tie a tie, and she says, I had a grandpa, he was nice to me, which is nice. Then we cut to maybe my favorite scene in the whole movie. Julia Roberts is singing in a genuinely huge bath. She has a Walkman. Am I right that this is actually a Walkman?
This is indeed a Walkman.
Of course it's a Walkman.
It's exactly the kind of technology that could have been used to record
Podcast?
no Bill Duke in the previous film.
Oh, right, I see. Gere offers her a business proposition. He wants her to spend the week with her, and he will give her a certain amount of money. The smile that Julia Roberts does in this moment is like the single movie star. Like immediately, it's like that's $400 million.
Incredible.
I like.
The singing also
Did not like I had seen this movie before, mostly in bits, and then like once a long time ago. I didn't expect I got like emotional when she does that smile. I was like, oh, it's incredible.
Everything's cute. The singing was improvised
Oh, that's great.
by Julia. She apparently came up with the idea.
Yeah.
But also, that was from one of my pages of facts that I do not trust, to be honest.
Yeah, there's also that thing about when she goes under and comes back up that the camera crew had left or
It
something.
doesn't make any
That's why I was
sense.
like, how they left?
They just left it running.
Everyone left, and
I
it's
know
just the
35
camera.
Yeah, I
millimeter
read that
film,
one
but just
too.
keep it going.
Was it like a
Apparently
prank?
they use detergent you read this one too, right? They
No.
use like a lot of detergent to make it extra bubbly. So it's not bubble bath,
Yeah.
but it meant apparently it washed the red hair dye out of her hair, like it stripped it. So she had to re-dye it after that.
Right.
Fun fact,
There are some scenes where you can see her hair, like the dye just under her hairline.
which I think is great character choice as well, because
Yeah.
this character would have regrowth for sure.
Yeah.
Richard Gere says, or Edward says, I will pay you to be at my beck and call. I want a professional. I don't need any romantic hassles this week. Oh, how wrong he is. Edward leaves. Vivian runs around the apartment screaming $3,000. Goddamn, she's so good. She calls Laura San Giacomo and boasts about her new gig. And then she says, like, where do I go to buy clothes? And San Giacomo says, in Beverly Hills, Rodeo Drive, baby, which is just a really good line reading.
I also love that Laura answers the phone when she goes, where were you last night? She goes, Ma! Which is just a great line.
Julia Roberts then goes down to the foyer of the lobby, leaves some money for San Giacomo to pick up, basically to pay the rent that she used for drug money. She walks past Héctor Elizondo, who eyes her and asks the lobby attendant who she is. Then we have a shopping scene. Wild Women Do by Natalie Cole plays. We cut to like Louis Vuitton, Chanel, Diamonds on Rodeo, and Julia Roberts goes into a store. The shop asks her to leave because she is poor. There is a very famous line. Oh, no, sorry. That
That's
line
later.
is later. Sorry, my fault. Immediately, I was like, that is such a crazy thing for a shop attendant to do. You should never, ever do that. Like,
Some would say it was a big mistake.
you might say that was a big mistake.
Huge? It's a huge mistake.
My only note in this scene is that the mannequin that in the background is in a really funny position. It's like this. It's got both arms up in zigzags.
I don't think you've ever seen a movie in your life. You're just distracted by any passing bird in the background.
enjoy things. I enjoy things in the background of movies. I find it really fun to watch. I just do. I love I love watching extras' faces in the background. I think that's always really fun. And I also just like weird.
I think that's really fun.
I would say this scene is hugely important because although she's been sparring really with Richard Gere, they've kind of been on the same level, even though he's technically employing her. She's been kind of challenging him. She's been kind of in control. I think we see her out of her element here. We see her
Out of
be
her depth.
very much treated to be small and kind of, it's like a stark reminder. And we have like, the shot before is her literally dancing around the hotel room, screaming and jumping on the bed and, and then to have her taken down. It's an awful scene. It's really important to the movie, but it makes me feel really sad. I was like, oh, just awful. And like, I don't know. I mean, I think when you feel like you don't belong somewhere, like, I don't know, it just, as a woman, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like when you kind of go in there, you're sort of like, oh, like I'm not on this level of like, it's a lot of, I think it's good.
Yeah, it is a great scene.
It's a great scene.
Awful.
Then she returns defeated to the hotel where Hector Elizondo stops her in the hotel lobby. He asks who she is, grills her, takes her into the office to kick her out, you think, and then halfway through he's like, look, Edward is a very important guest of ours, and normally this sort of thing doesn't fly, but because he's such a important guest of ours, I'm assuming you're a relative, which is really, really good.
All of the coaching in that is wonderful.
And yeah, he is wonderful in this movie. He's like, it's so funny. I was so delighted watching this movie being like, oh, this podcast does make sense. Like, of being like, yeah, we're tracking this kind of different styles of acting over like different decades, like from 76 to 90, and like seeing this guy go from scumbum to like lovely older uncle is like such a lovely thing. And the twinkle in his eye, which is not there in Detective Sunday, which I think is purposeful, but is like, and obviously like it's a bit of a Gary Marshall thing, but it's like, I know it's silly to be like actors acting, like, but it's just lovely to watch.
Obviously, at the start of this scene, you set up to think he's going to be like a real problem for her. You know, like, you know, he's kind of on her immediately. He knows, he drags her out. He's like, let's go have a chat, you know, kind of thing. And you're like, oh no, here comes the big bad.
Yeah.
And then he turns out to be quite, like, you know, there's still things that he's kind of like, I don't, you know, but we understand each other. I think it happens in American Gigolo as well, where that idea of like sex workers being framed as hospitality. So people who work in hospitality, people who have jobs that provide hospitality for other people kind of get each other and they have a level of respect, which I love.
It is more at the front of the film in this, but I think it's more effective in American Gigolo.
Yeah, I agree.
For certain reasons that we'll get to later. But Elizondo's character is without flaw. Like, he is
so good.
Like, also Gary Marshall, when he was describing how he thinks of all the characters in this, he's obviously, you've got Gere as the generic Prince Charming, then you've got Julia as some cross between Rapunzel and Cinderella, and then Elizondo, he said, was the fairy godmother.
Yeah, absolutely.
He absolutely is.
Which is so beautiful, and a wonderful fairy god performance.
And he picks up the phone.
So yeah, Roberts complains to Elizondo about how she can't buy anything to wear because all the shop people hate her.
She's crying, she's holding like this big ball of money.
Elizondo helps her out and calls his women's clothing girl. Very cool to have just be like, oh, I'll just call up my lady. That's
women's fashion, who also is flirting with him on the other side of that phone.
Absolutely.
His little, like,
we're going to talk about Eleanor Donahue.
She's great.
Richard Gere and Jason Alexander, we cut to them. They're talking about business. I was pretty dismissive of this, writing my notes. I was like, something in the big deal is going wrong. The business that's supposed to be going bankrupt suddenly has a $350 million deal to build destroyer-class boats for the military, for the Navy, I think specifically. Don't care about that. Julia Roberts meets Bridget, played by Eleanor Donahue. A one-scene performance that I think is like so incredible. It's just a wonderful... Anyway, just wanted to point her out.
She's wonderful in this.
Helps her out with some clothes for the big meeting tonight. Yeah, she says, going out? Dinner? Well, you'll need a cocktail dress. Great. Julia Roberts runs back to tell Hector Elizondo about her nice new dress. I guess they're best friends now. It's the same thing in Speed of like just immediately like the bus driver and Sandy are like the best friends forever. Like this immediate thing of like, you just need someone to be like, how good.
Incredible stuff.
Yeah, this movie might be infantilizing towards its lead character, but boy, is it just nice. Elizondo then teaches Julia Roberts how to eat at a fancy restaurant. Teaches
training sequence.
Training montage.
Training arc.
Shrimp fork, salad fork, dinner fork. We learned the difference between the three. That night, Elizondo meets up with Richard Gere in the lobby and talks about Vivian, describes her as your niece is an intriguing young woman. And Gere's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, your niece, the woman that's in the thing. Yeah.
Wink, wink.
And Richard Gere's like, great, no worries, walks away. And then Elizondo goes, I'm the manager of the hotel, sir.
Yeah,
as he walks away.
My note on that was like, Gere being rude to Elizondo, really not helping.
Gere then goes looking for Julia Roberts, finds her in the hotel bar. She's in a beautiful black dress. I've just written, she looks good.
And Richard Gere agrees.
Yes.
In that moment, he agrees.
Does a great little double take as he doesn't recognize her at the
That's
start.
so good.
It's good.
That's real. That's a
real.
really good. Like that's a great double take.
It's a
You don't
good
get
Gary
to do
Marshall
them very
stuff.
much.
Yeah.
You know. Julia Roberts says you're late, and then Gere says you're stunning. They go to dinner. Mr. Morse, played by Ralph Bellamy, who is in a bunch of is in a couple of like 30s
Yes.
slapstick comedies, screwball comedies.
His last performance.
Oh, really? There you go. R.I.P. to Ralph. Great. He's fucking great in this
Great
movie.
supporting role.
And his grandson, David Morse, played by Alex Hyde White. Let me give you Alex Hyde White for a second. Ishtar, 1994's The Fantastic Four. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
1994's.
Yes, The Fantastic Four. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Catch Me If You Can. Nope.
That's a great list.
What a list.
I also really want to watch the 1994 Fantastic Four, which is the one that was only made to keep the rights of the
Yes.
Fantastic Four with, I believe, it wasn't under Fox's banner, so it was so it was made for about, I think it was made for less than $1 million, and it was not officially released. It was released on, I think, one screen exclusively, so the rights didn't default back to their original creator.
You know what I thought was going to happen when I first watched this movie? And then when I forgot what happened, I watched it again. The grandson. I thought, you know, at the start, am I wrong in this? So at the start, when they are, when Julia Roberts' character is on the street,
Yes.
and a Ferrari drives past with a guy on it, and he goes like, "Give us a it's my birthday," and he like
Yeah,
heckles
yeah.
her.
Creepy.
I straight up thought that was him. And I thought it was going to end up that he realized who she was. And that's what I fully thought was going to happen, and it didn't amount to
I
that.
don't think that's him.
I know it's
No,
not.
it's not.
But I thought that it was for a second. I had this whole new, I was like, oh, is that what happened? I was like, wow, interesting. She's going to get like, and then I was like, oh, wow, this is so wrong.
A classic thing in this, I bring it up later, but a classic Gary Marshall thing is like, look, there's no real conflict here. Like, don't stress about there actually being anything maybe going wrong. Like, everything, yeah, there's just never anything that she's never really gonna get. It's the same thing as the Hector Elizondo thing of like, you think it's gonna be, fuck, this is gonna be a big conflict, and then it's like, and everyone loves you. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I was so wrong about that, but I had this whole side plot.
It makes sense.
It does make sense.
It would be a good note.
It would be something that you'd add to the script in a script that was not a Gary Marshall film. So the other thing, sorry, very quickly about Alex Hyde White is that he is known as Punch to his friends, which is awesome. I want to be called Punch.
I love
Judy.
this scene because these two are nice. And
Yes.
that's like a thing. They're from the club. They're like the first kind of window into, it's important
Yeah,
because,
they're the good billionaires.
yeah.
That's exactly right.
And they make her feel welcome because he, you know, that line where he goes, I never know which one to use. You know, like, as in the fork, so.
And
yeah,
Gere orders
particularly the granddad,
escargot.
Ralph Bellamy, is like, nah, I'm just a honorary old man, and all I want to do is just own my business that I make. I
think he built-
work for the military-industrial complex.
I make
I feel
ships for the Navy.
I think it's meant to be kind of in my head, even though actually looking at what he does, it's probably not makes no sense. But I feel like he built this from the ground up, and he's a that's what I got from that
He's
performance.
definitely supposed to be a salt of the earth guy.
A salt
Yeah.
of the earth billionaire.
Yeah.
So-
then they start to talk business. Gere's kind of being an asshole. Vivian tries to deal with the food. I described it as like the Temple of Doom scene, but with French food rather than with monkey heads. Then one of them slips out of her fork. And the waiter catches it. She says, slippery little suckers. And he says, it happens all the time. The exact same thing happens with the same actor playing the waiter in Runaway Bride, I think.
No, it's a Princess Diaries.
It's Princess Diaries.
Oh,
Which I've now
fantastic.
realized in hindsight is literally the exact same movie, except she's turning into a princess instead of just like, and like, even though it's like the PG, it's like the G-rated version.
It's also her grandmother.
Yeah, but like, it's not like, it's a G-rated storyline.
100%.
Where-
but
Richard Gere plays her grandmother?
No, as in like, it's obviously not to do with, there's like the romance
Yeah.
storyline, but I mean like in terms of just,
It is a movie.
How
It's a fairy
It's
tale.
a movie about glowing up.
yeah, and her just feeling an outsider, and the same actors are in it. Hector Elizondo plays the same
role.
character. That
right.
guy plays the same character.
Yeah.
And I love this like weird cinematic universe of like different ratings and like different
I
levels
haven't
of
watched
edge.
the Princess Diaries in a long time.
we are
I'm
gonna
ask
do
it-
the-
Oh, yeah,
we
we're
are
gonna do
officially
it next week.
covering it.
Is there a love interest in that movie?
Yes, there is.
Who plays the love interest?
I don't know his name, but
Foot-popping kiss.
he's the he is her best friend's brother, and he's a musician. He couldn't be in the sequel, so they wrote him out. And they said that his band was doing really well.
Look, you guys don't have to. I am going to watch both.
Oh, yeah, there's
Oh, one
three.
and
Are there
two.
three?
Yeah. There might be a straight-to-video 3 that doesn't have Hathaway in it.
I've seen 1 and I've probably seen 2.
I don't think I've ever seen 2.
I saw 1
seen
at the
2.
cinema.
I saw both in the cinema.
Anyway, after the dinner, Julia Roberts and Gere talk about what happened. She's like, clearly the business is going well and you could fuck this guy over. But she kind of says to Gere, it's like, you clearly like that old guy. You have a conscience, so this is going to be hard for you. And Gere's like, no way, I'm such a bastard. Nothing could get under this cold exterior. Julia Roberts then watches TV. I think that's How to Marry a Millionaire is the movie that she's watching, which is good fun. Finishes the movie, then goes to look for
She's studying.
Ed Lewis downstairs. He's playing. This is my favorite scene that is not good. She goes downstairs in a little dressing gown, and he's playing piano to a bunch of like lobby boys and janitors
closed the bar, obviously,
that have
and-
closed the bar and are all just like, God damn, he's so good. I'm not a great pianist. It's just fine.
They're all sitting there as well, and then he said, like, he waves his hand, says leave, and they all file out. They're not sitting there enjoying them.
They're
He's
waiting for him to leave.
Their job is to close the bar, and he's not getting off the piano, and no one can speak to him because he's a billionaire. This also, the end of the scene is that they have sex on the piano.
That's right.
Someone else has to clean that fucking piano gear.
That's right.
You absolute trash bag. You don't own this fucking. I hate him so much.
Yeah, not gonna lie, piano scene still kind of hot though.
Absolutely.
Like, I personally would not be able to navigate that if I were Julia Roberts in that scene, because I had the same reaction. I'd be like, the poor bartenders need to leave. Can you please get back up to your presidential suite?
This isn't your
But
fucking piano.
for a movie, it's a bit of a sexy scene. It's probably the sexiest scene in the movie, I would say.
Yeah, I find
And a
it-
famous sex scene.
Is it?
I
Why
like
is
that
is
the
it
piano
famous
keeps
for a
going
particular
dong.
reason?
Yeah, because the piano keeps going dong, and it's like we kind of see, it's just like a very kind of
Interesting comparing this sex scene and the American Gigolo sex scene. Like, this scene is all constant movement.
Yeah,
like,
it's a sex scene. It's an
yeah,
actual sex scene.
yeah,
not an ad
rather
for
than like
chocolate.
this kind of disjointed, like weird. What did you say?
an ad for chocolate.
Yeah.
I want to say that there's a great line before he storms downstairs where she's like, why don't we watch some old movies and just say veg out?
Yeah.
Which
it's
is
really
again
cute.
putting towards your theory of like they somehow seem more comfortable than like it's kind of, that's what I would do with my long-term partner. I'd be like, yeah, stress for dinner. Let's like order some pizza
let's
and
order
some
watch
pizza and
something
veg
like,
out.
yeah, they kind of, it's nice. And then he's like, no, let's go have sex on the piano
I'm
instead.
going to go downstairs and play
Sorry,
piano.
because he's sad because he feels guilty about the business deal that he doesn't want to do.
So he's gonna
and
play
so he's
it
like,
out.
I got to play it out. Hey, I understand that impulse, but to force people to listen to you is yeah, it's really, really rough.
It's sexy, but it's also lacking intimacy in a way as well. It's like kind
Which
of,
I think,
and I think is
yeah,
important
It's
because
important,
he,
it's purposeful, I think.
yeah, because you see him we still see this man using those around him. Like he kind of owns everyone in this scenario.
Yeah.
In the morning, Edward gives her a card to buy anything she wants. Takes her into a shop and says he's going to buy an obscene amount of clothing. I didn't actually write his name down. I'm so sorry, but the manager of the shop here,
He's in heaps
Larry
of
Miller.
things.
Larry
Yeah.
Miller.
Absolute dynamo of a guy. He works forever.
What an incredible form.
In Boston Legal. Really good in Boston
Of
Legal.
course, he's a Boston
Real
legal
Boston
guy.
legal guy.
There's a clothing montage. I just wrote "Pretty Woman," the song. Julia Roberts.
It's the song. I was somehow surprised.
Written by Ray Orbison. Did we have a
Yes,
good
that's
one?
right. Julia Roberts in a stunning kind of white dress with the buttons all down the front. I love that look. She goes back into the shop that wouldn't serve her yesterday, and this is where we get the line, "You work on commission, right?" Big mistake. Huge. It's very good, in my opinion.
Very good. Richard
scene.
Gere, once again, though, in the scene before, is rude to all staff. So
Yes. Yes, he is rude. He is rude to all staff. So then we cut back again to the boring stuff. Richard Gere and Alexander are talking business. Alexander pleads for Gere to finish the deal with Morse, and Gere thinks about building blocks. We will come back to the building blocks thing. I think it's extremely funny and very problematic in kind of today's current lens.
That's the other thing. His core thing is about learning to be a better billionaire. Like that's
right.
That is the other thing that makes this movie just fall apart for me. Is like it's all the same. You're either making stuff, and this is like what all the like stuff, the takes at the time that were like, this isn't a movie about love, this is a movie about capitalism, this is a movie about ownership and possession and money. That is all like the more complicated way of looking at it. That's a more smart take than it. But the problem is, he's so unlikable. He's so unforgivable. There's nothing in there. There's nothing inside him. He doesn't change significantly. All he does is commit to a relationship once in his life and decide to build ships once in his life for the Navy rather than just taking apart other companies and selling them, which is they're morally even. Nothing changes in this man. Nothing changes. He just wins.
I think heaps of things change in this man. Bear in mind, this takes over the course of a week.
It does take over.
It would be pretty weird if he suddenly was like, you know what? I'm giving up everything. I think it's baby steps kind of vibe. And it would be
right,
weird.
I don't think this character deserves a single thing. Like, there's nothing in this starting character that makes me want to see him get better.
Well, that's life. That's how this works.
That's how movies
the
go.
The rich get richer.
The rich get richer.
That's reality.
But this is literally a fantasy.
Yeah, but it's fantasy from her perspective. He has to be able to provide the financial
That's the thing. Yeah.
The thing about having money, though, is obviously it's morally wrong, but it is nice.
It is.
And Gary Marshall likes things that are nice.
He likes nice things.
It's also the best scene of Gere is right here because it's Julia Roberts and Richard Gere having a bath together. This
you just like baths by the sound of this.
I also like baths.
Gere's feet are pruny at the start of this, which
I
I
notice.
know is to indicate time, but seems really like it's kind of weirdly off-putting for this such a sheeny movie.
Quite a few feet shots in this movie.
That's true.
Just throwing it out there.
They talk about Edward Lewis's
Not
mother.
saying anything.
They talk about Edward Lewis's mother dying, and how he was very angry at his father for her death. I think that when he's like, it cost me $10,000 of therapy just to say that I am very angry at my father. I think that's so good. It's such a good performance.
I think it's a
from him.
good performance.
And I think he becomes slightly more sympathetic in that moment. Next day, they're at a polo game. Jason Alexander is rude to his wife, and we cut to Jason Alexander being like, "Watch where you're walking, because if you step on something, we're not going back to the car," which is really, really good. Julia Roberts meets some society ladies, and then they put the divots back into the grass.
Apparently,
Yeah.
that's a polo
Has anyone
tradition.
ever been to a polo game?
I learned it in this movie.
I loved it in that movie, and I didn't question it because I have never been to a polo game.
Yeah, I guess
In a
that's
shocking twist.
I don't think
really?
It's weird.
A
I know.
high society lady.
I know.
I've seen your hats. They're huge.
You've got that Michelle Williams hat from that promotional photo for the Fablemans. Have you guys seen that huge hat?
Yes, the umbrella hat.
God, that's such a big hat.
My note on this, having never watched polo before in my life, was like, who was the wild card that was like, yeah, but what if it was in a swimming pool?
What? Oh, like to make water polo.
I was like,
right. Sorry. I was like, did you watch this?
yeah, no. I was like, oh, that's what polo is. Horses, hammers. Yeah. How the hell does this work in a pool?
I think they're different sports inherently.
Why are they called the same? Like, I know there's no answer for it on this podcast, the movie podcast.
No, I know.
You know?
No, I've got no idea.
Please get in the comments and inform to me the origins.
So
Water polo.
this really hammers home that this film takes a bunch of inspiration from Pygmalion and My Fair Lady, because there's a famous scene in My Fair Lady where she goes to the races and she's looking, it's Audrey Hepburn, and she's like, you know, with her big hat, and then she starts like screaming. She's like, yeah, funny that.
Oh, that's fun.
And it's
I've
kind
never
of,
seen that movie. I should watch it.
you should absolutely watch My Fair Lady. Or look up Julie Andrews doing the original stage version.
Yeah, I think I've seen not the Julie. I wasn't alive.
I saw it in 1960.
No, I saw a stage production of it a very long time ago.
I was in a production of Pygmalion in high school, but not My Fair Lady.
Okay.
I played the lawyer.
Okay. Jason, at the polo game is David Morse, the grandson. He flirts with Vivian and shows her his horse, which is great. Jason Alexander sees this and is immediately suspicious of Julia Roberts being a con on Gere and his business. He thinks that she was hired by David Morse to seduce Richard Gere, industrial espionage. And I wrote here, this is the thing that I'm talking about. This has nothing to do with the central conflict and adds no real stakes, but has the feeling of conflict without actually injecting any into the movie. And I was like, that's the Gary Marshall magic.
I mean, it does have stakes in the next bit. Like, in terms of the main conflict of the film, that Jason Alexander and his disdain towards her is the huge thing that happens.
It's the societal pressure between Gere and It's the external representation of the societal pressure and like the class difference between Gere and Julia.
And his treatment of her.
Yeah,
obviously,
but
is a main
him
conflict.
being wrong about it is the thing that's like, yeah, I think it would be easier to kind of like keep that up. But the thing that changes is that Gere tells
Yeah, which is the
Alexander,
main conflict.
That's the thing
Yeah.
that becomes the conflict.
Also, stop fidgeting.
Me?
No,
I'm
that's the.
Okay, that's pretty rude to say. Julia Roberts and Richard Gere have a fight. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Gere then tells Alexander that Julia Roberts is a sex worker, and Alexander immediately goes and tries to pick her
Solicitor.
up. Yucky, yucky. Julia Roberts and Richard Gere have a fight about him revealing she's a hooker to Alexander. He made her feel cheap. Weird echoes of scenes in American Gigolo. I wrote, if you are poor, even if you were invited into high society, you can never truly be a part of it.
Yeah.
They think their blood is different than yours, and no matter how gracious they are, it'll never work. Also, I wrote, this scene is really weird. Then it ends up with them kind of making up and in bed. And Gere says, you could be so much more. That is like my least favorite part of the movie. I wish that scene was not in the movie.
This is also the cliche of jealousy as a compliment.
We haven't talked about the bellhop guy.
Oh, we have
yeah,
it.
Dennis.
Because in this, I like when she goes to storm out of the penthouse and she calls the elevator up, and he sort of been like on her team as well.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
he's part of their crew.
Everyone
is on her team.
immediately like, holy shit,
Just-
that's Julia
I'm
Roberts.
very charmed by
Everyone
this charming
in the
person.
hotel is. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Which
she.
is the service worker. Great stuff.
Yeah, but it's so funny. He arrives and he's like, eh? And then he's just like, oh, and he leaves again.
He
Mid
does like the
argument.
Homer back into the bushes into the elevator.
What does he say? Wow, you were the Simpsons reference this episode. That
That's
was not a
right.
twist that I saw
Hello.
coming. I think that there's a line there where she says, you made me feel cheaper than anyone else has, which is interesting.
Next day, now everything's resolved. That scene takes it's like two scenes. They have a huge fight, and then immediately it's resolved by Richard Gere being like kissing her on the no, he doesn't. No, he doesn't kiss her then. But it is just being like, you know what? I believe that you could be more than what you are right now.
Yeah.
Really bad.
We mentioned the rule of no kissing on the mouth. It's hugely
my
important
God.
to
Yeah,
this movie plot. So there's a rule for Julia Roberts' character, which is that when she's working, she refuses to kiss on the mouth because it is too intimate.
Yeah.
And it could lead to developing feelings, and it makes it less of a business transaction.
I think that's one of the smartest things any movie has ever done, is being like, hey, you know the thing that you know these two movie stars are going to do, and the whole thing that you came to the fucking movies for is to see the prettiest people in the world kiss? They're not allowed. No way this is going to resolve. I think that's like, I know it's probably kind of patently ridiculous, but I'm like, that's genius. That's like such a smart, clever thing to be like, that's the rule of the movie. No kissing allowed.
That's a fun premise.
Yeah.
I will also note that I'm pretty sure this is exactly when I started watching the second half of the movie and I hadn't had my coffee. And every note for the next, until I get my first coffee, is extremely angry.
Next day, they go on a date. Julia Roberts is in a beautiful red dress. She looks uncomfortable in the clothes, which is a nice touch. Mr. Lewis gives Vivian a nice necklace. He pretends to slam the box on her hand. That's Julia Roberts' actual laugh.
This is the Viggo Mortensen kind
Yes,
of like, this is the
of Pretty
rom-com
Woman.
version where we know that if everyone goes, you know that he improvised that and she didn't know it was going to clasp down. He did and she laughed. It's great.
She says, if I forgot to tell you later, I had a really good time tonight. That's really good. That's just a good line.
Let's just talk about the red dress. You just brushed over it like it was no big thing.
Oh,
Like it wasn't the
absolutely.
most stunning dress to ever appear on screen. Like that
It's a
is
beautiful
that
looking
outfit,
dress.
the way she looks going to this spoiler opera that she's about to go to,
Yeah.
is insane, and it's like been voted one of the most iconic film dresses of all time.
It is really, really
gorgeous.
beautiful.
I think it's my third favorite dress in the film.
Is your first one
Interesting.
the first?
No, my first one is the white, kind of slightly more
Where she
business lady
tells
with the
off.
hat. My second one is the brown polka dot dress that she wears to the polo, and then the third one I think is the red one at the opera.
That is wild. The red one is glorious.
Yeah, the red one is absolutely beautiful, and Gere.
I love them all. to
They're
be
all,
fair.
Yeah,
you know,
they're all
then
beautiful.
again, what we've learned from this film is there's an occasion for every dress. So we've
That's
actually, depends on what your vibe is. Do you
That's
want a cocktail
class.
dress?
And
An opera dress?
Gere compliments Julia Roberts in this particular sequence, saying that you're really beautiful.
Fallen by Lauren Wood is playing. Elizondo sees her in the dress and smiles like a proud dad. They get onto
Lights
a
up the
private jet
room.
and go to the opera. Julia Roberts watches the opera. I think that's why you nominate her for an Oscar. I
Because she
wonder-
can make make it look like opera's interesting.
Traviata.
Well, some people, the first time they see opera, they fall in love with it, but that's a very rare sort of person. And you're clearly not one of them. To be fair, neither am I. Don't like opera. Next day.
I can appreciate. I mean, obviously, the opera we go and see is La Traviata, which is literally the storyline of Pretty
it's
Woman.
the story.
So there
I
you go.
remember when we first became friends, I came over with a bunch of beers to your house and we were drinking. And I was like, oh, what have you been up to? And you were like, I'm 1/8 of the way through the ring of the Nibelungen Gong.
Yeah,
and I was
the ring
like,
cycle.
what are you on, man?
I'm on music.
I like opera. I appreciate it. I think if I see it, I'm like, God, good job, you.
Good job,
Good
everyone.
bloody job. Anyway.
I'm to be fair, probably neutral in opera, but I just get sorry.
Julia Roberts is so good in that scene.
Julia Roberts is incredible.
And
in that
I
scene.
actually want to have a conversation. Have you seen Portrait of a Lady on Fire?
No.
Okay, I want to. Celine Sciamma, if you're listening, is the last scene of your movie inspired by this? I'll leave it there. Next day, Gere takes the day off work. Jason Alexander is shocked while playing Tiny Pool.
Tiny Pool!
Love Tiny Pool. They go.
Tiny Jason.
Gere and Julia Roberts go together to a park and read Shakespeare quotations, which is so funny.
She literally makes him touch grass.
Yeah.
She pulls off his shoes and like plants his feet in the grass.
Absolutely.
work.
They go to a
What
kebab
quotes
shop.
do they do?
Sorry?
What quotes do they do?
I'm not going to do this right
No,
now.
no, I can't remember. I'm sure it's.
Oh, it's just a book that says that
No,
the
they
title
don't.
of the
They
book
don't
is.
actually read anything.
There's a
It just
he's
says-
reading a book to her, and the title of the book is Shakespearean quotes.
Oh, it's so funny.
It just says Shakespeare quotations.
Sorry, Shakespeare quotations.
Yeah, but they don't actually read to each other. But if I had to guess, it would
gonna
be some of
pitch
the
me a line?
sonnets.
And then he made them all into pies.
What?
Titan
Is
Andronicus.
this a dagger I see before me?
Yeah, that's what they're doing. They're doing to be or not to be. That is
That
the
really
question.
is the question.
Yeah, sorry, this is when I... so Julia Roberts, they're back at home. She's in this stunning nightgown. That might be... No, I guess that's my number 4.
I do love the nightgown.
It's beautiful. Yeah, I know it's maybe problematic, but it's really smart to have the rule of your characters be like, we're never, ever going to kiss.
I also will say I love the line, he sleeps. It's such a good little delivery. It's really sweet.
I don't think it's problematic. I think it sets boundaries in her business relationship, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Because and then when she by her own kind of, she's the one that initiates. It's not like he forces her to kiss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sex scene happens here where they kiss, shot through a wall divider, which I always think is funny.
It is.
It's always like very clear. It's like to give the shot kind of like motion and interesting kind of shape to it. But I'm always like, that's just a wall divider.
It's just a guy.
This is where I fell asleep.
That's
rewatched.
Hey.
Crazy.
Yeah, after the opera, I was out like a light.
That's crazy to me.
I know, and I had to pick it up again.
So next day, the end of the movie kind of starts. Gere is going back. Oh, sorry. The night before, Julia Roberts says, I love you, but Gere doesn't respond.
Yeah.
Kind of sad. Next day, Gere is going back to New York, and Julia Roberts is pissed that he's not staying with her, and thinks that she can still be bought for him. She kind of rejects the whole notion of what this thing was, and it's like, I don't even want the money because now this has become something else, and you're not being honest about it.
Because this is where he offers to basically make her a kept woman.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
It's like,
in
I'll
big
buy you an
quotes.
apartment, I'll buy you any clothes that you want. All you have to do is when I come to New York, to LA, you have to service me. Like, and it's like, ugh, that's not what we agreed on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's his version of a relationship as well, which is what he's always kind of done.
Yeah, he
He's
wants
sort of,
transactional.
Yeah, exactly. I wrote here, no set has ever looked more on the ground than this balcony set.
Yes.
There is some, it's like real fancy high school Romeo and Juliet balcony going on.
It's like a lack of wind or something. The air
There's-
seems
the air is
still.
completely still, and there's like, they look down and you're like, I can tell that your eyes are looking at like as far as this table. Like,
Yeah, it is an extremely flat set.
and I don't know how that is. I don't know how that effect is created. Like how it so clearly looks. I
It's
mean,
also
it just
kind
does
of the
look like a
placement of the
set.
camera as well, because the camera is
that's part
placed.
of it.
The camera is placed just out and below the below the edge of the balcony, which would be the hardest place to film.
Yeah.
And if you ever got a proper reverse shot or any sort of mid shot, you'd get a more sense of space and height. But
Yeah.
because of it so often being in the same spot, which is like about half a foot below the handrail, it's like, oh, this is just ghostly and weird.
The 2023 version of this movie is her going, sure, takes his deal and is like, and is, you know, what I mean, like, is kind of like, here's a sugar daddy. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
If you have a sex worker who treats sex work as a job as opposed to getting emotional and kind of carried away with it, if you're going the non-rom-com version of it, similar to White Lotus season 2, where it's sort of like I think there's a version of this movie where that happens.
Well, and where
And
the,
she's
the
like,
power
"Sucker."
balance suddenly changes, and then
Absolutely.
it becomes, you know, it's like her siphoning his money slowly
Yeah.
as she gains more and more power, and that's an interesting
I
movie.
would have loved that movie.
Yeah.
Because Richard
I
Gere.
believe it's called Sanctuary. It's out in theaters in September.
But anyway, this movie is a rom-com where she wants to fall in love and she doesn't want to continue her job because she wants to be in a real relationship with
Yeah,
him.
and she-
That is, they're changing the dynamic.
She has a princess in a castle speech.
Julia, she gives a big monologue about being saved by a white knight. My partner, Rachel, your guys' friends, my partner.
Are you bragging?
This-
What's going on?
That's right.
I
am.
have a girlfriend.
I have a girlfriend.
Humble brag. You all know.
Now, you guys know this, but the audience may not. Has a degree in feminist science fiction. She said she was watching the kind of second half of this movie with me after a meeting, and she just screams out after that that monologue. She screams out, "She wants the fairy tale. There's nothing wrong with that. That's feminism." Which we love and is true.
Sure.
Yeah, no, that's why I think that's why the issues I had with this movie surprised me, considering I was expecting to be like, oh, and I think that through a modern lens, you're kind of like, that's fine, she wants that.
Yeah.
All good. I was just bored at this point.
That's
Yeah,
so
it does nothing for me
crazy
either.
to me.
It does nothing
That
for me
is
either
so
way.
crazy to me.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to like talk about the problems with the movie in terms of like the capitalism stuff and the way it treats the Richard Gere character. It is so not boring. It is so delightful in every pore of this movie's being. That's so bizarre to
Look,
me.
I think I know that I am in the minority with that opinion, and I know that that's interesting. We both have this take because, you know, it's a pretty successful film. People like it a lot. People enjoy it. It's a rom-com that people like to rewatch.
I'm people.
I don't
Yeah,
think.
which is fine. I think it's like it just doesn't do it for me as a movie. I don't know what it is. And I think it is actually probably to do with maybe the storyline with Richard Gere and the business and that kind of thing, or maybe because I love My
that's
Fair
like
Lady.
4
so I'm
minutes
like,
of the movie. The business thing is like they try and fly past that shit so fast.
is it a long? It felt
It's quite long.
It's an hour 50.
That's long
I think.
for a rom-com.
I don't think the. I don't.
Set over a course of a week.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think I'm necessarily bored by it. I am just unenthused at multiple
Yeah,
points, and it is almost always. It falls between the sequences where I am enjoying seeing Julia Roberts enjoying her life, and then frustrated about her and Gere because I'm like screaming, just leave. Just take the money and run.
I don't disagree. Laura San Giacomo is back. She's waiting in the lobby
so
with
happy about
Hector Elizondo. So am I.
Yeah.
So happy about both of them together.
She rolls her eyes and blows bubble gum at him, which is great. Then the gals hang out, which is a great scene.
The gals
Julia
hang
Roberts, actually, this might be my favorite outfit in an incredible kind of three-quarter length
outfit,
shorts and a
actually.
matching blazer.
Yeah.
Kind of like coral color. I think that's so good. And San Giacomo is like, you've fallen in love with your client. That's the one rule that we talked about. And then is like, it can work. It happens.
I love that. And then they're like, name one person
Yeah,
it's happened for.
and she's like, oh, the pressure of a name. Cinder-fucking-rella.
Really good, really
That's
well
so
delivered.
good.
But I just want to jump back a tiny bit.
Sure.
Just to talk about what Hector Elizondo gets pulled away for, because at the end of the previous sequence he gets pulled away because there's something going wrong, and what it is a window washer is refusing to come down, and then he looks to Sam and she just to Laura, and she just goes, "It's a Saturday," and wanders off. It's such a great. I love to see Hector busy. Like,
Yeah, we love
he's
to
like,
see him busy.
People, window washers get stuck all the time. He's such a champion.
I have this weird fantasy of working in a hotel. And I don't know like why that's my fantasy.
Yes.
But I have this, I kind of would love to see like the inner workings. I would love to see like a Faulty Towers-esque, but like.
Boy, do I have a TV show for you.
It's the Grand Budapest Hotel was the first
Yeah.
a movie that is one very similarly to The Bear, and I guess you could make connections between this and American Gigolo and kind of this film. Anyway, the idea of service being a really important thing and a really pure calling. It's a really wonderful. It is a really wonderful running theme through these hotel movies. But I currently do work in a hotel where I'm in charge of a lot of the minutiae of it, it's a really, why am I worried about getting fired? It's a really shit hotel.
Hey, dude, you quit.
An anti-plug for the Urco Hotel right here. It's just a really frustrating experience working in a hotel in real life, I've discovered.
To be
Yes,
fair,
I think it's a bit of a difference between the hotel you're working
between
at
what
and
you do
not
and what
the 5
Hector Elizondo
seasons.
does.
You're
Is it
right,
the
but
5 seasons?
they added another.
you're absolutely right. It could not be more different, but boy, has it killed that little flame of interest in my heart of
Spring,
being a
summer,
concierge.
autumn, winter, and sponge.
To be honest with you, though, I think that they would offer completely different problems in themselves. And I think that the clientele you'd be dealing with if you were Hector Elizondo would be a nightmare as well. You're dealing with Richard Gere.
100%.
So I'd honestly would
can
probably
you
rather
imagine
deal with the
having- yeah, see, this is
clientele
the thing.
of like,
Off the piano.
yeah, no. I think I'd struggle more with entitled assholes.
I do love the bit where there's a shoe scuff on the floor and Hector's talking to Dennis and Dennis is like, I swear I didn't do it. And he goes, it doesn't matter who did it. That's fine. Just call maintenance. We need to get this cleaned up as soon as possible. It's just good. It's good work.
He's good at his job.
It's good, what do you call it? Work.
All right.
So now, of course, there's a very big meeting that's very important happens. Everyone cares about this meeting. Gere talks to Granddaddy Morse, levels with him. My interests in your company have changed. He wants to help old Granddaddy Morse now. He's a changed man. Now he wants to build things for the Navy, work for the military-industrial complex. What a guy. I think that is obviously... I think it's so funny. That made me laugh so much. I was like, wait.
If you didn't see that
reason
coming,
this
though...
I did after the building blocks thing, but I was like, wait, is the premise of this movie that the reason that Richard Gere's a good guy now is that he builds warships? Like,
Yes. It's fucking terrible.
it rules. He then goes and walks bare feet in the park while Julia Roberts walks barefoot in the hotel room. Jason Alexander comes into the hotel room and tries to proposition Julia Roberts, then tries to sexually assault her. This scene does not need to be in the movie whatsoever. I think it is a blemish on what otherwise I think is actually quite a nice film. But it just is clearly from the other script and stinks and completely takes me out. Gere comes in, and also this sucks. Gere comes in and fights Jason Alexander off, sends him on his way, and then punches him, and then tends to Julia Roberts' wounds. Very clearly, like, she needed to be saved. No thanks.
Yeah, I also found this out of tone with the movie.
Completely out of tone with the movie.
Yeah, it's just awful.
But it's like it doesn't fit with the level of conflict that we've had so far.
It's a real bummer.
You could have had the same thing with him just threatening to like expose that she
Exactly.
was
Like
a sex
it just
worker.
needs to be like you can have that same conflict. You just don't need to have and this is not like a prudish like you're not allowed to show those things on screen. It's like no, of course you are, but like it just doesn't feel at all delicate in the film. It feels like a blunt force, like making you feel something for the character, but then like doesn't play it like that. Doesn't play like it's serious for the character. It's just like not earned, unfelt. Very bad.
I think it's what happens afterwards. It's more kind of the way they handle it that's more of the problem, actually.
Given no way.
Because I think that I can understand wanting to include a scene in which you see how people in like certain people, his colleagues view her work as in I can just own you, I can do whatever I want, I can do this. I think you could show that though in this as well, because I think you have to do it earlier and you have to have that be more of a conflict, and it has to be kind of. I think the way they handle it is really weird. It's sort of like he punches him and he's fired and bye.
And
then
they all
it's
argue, and then Jason Alexander needs to be like killed and flayed. Like
I think it's just
he's
like
the devil.
It also needs to be a bigger conversation about like how people view, like it's a different movie. That's the thing.
Yeah,
like,
that's the thing. It's like that's a different movie, so why would you include this?
And
Yeah.
it shouldn't be Gere's hero moment.
No,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was in a different movie, so it makes sense. And I think
Yes.
I kind of
It
go.
does make sense because it was from a different movie.
Yeah, but I look, I have so many mixed kind of feelings on those kind of scenes included in movies, because I do think that it is something that does happen in reality frequently.
Of course.
So it's just the way that films handle it and the way that they use it for narrative devices, and it became a trope for this one. It's sort of like, it's like, and then you become a tougher woman because you've got like, that is the problematic representation of sexual assault on film. Happens all the time, and it's sort of like a not handled super well in many films. This one, I think they could have included that. They just needed to give it more weight. It needs to be a bigger deal, and it needs to happen earlier, but like as opposed to not. It's like towards the end.
Yeah, we've got like 10 minutes left to go.
Yeah,
in the movie.
I think it's the way it's handled after that's the problem for me. Yeah, But I don't think it's out of character for Jason Alexander's character to do that. though.
No.
So that's the thing.
But
so
it's like,
I go,
it's just
interesting.
like, it's about tone and structure.
Absolutely.
And like it's
yeah.
you know.
It's definitely not my favorite part of that film. And I kind of was like, no, that felt like that was poorly handled.
And Gere's, I just hate Gere's role in it as well, to be like the hero rescuing. I also thought it was going to be a Hector Elizondo coming up. It feels like, because it's just weird that Gere appears in that
if
sequence.
Hector Elizondo came in and like as Julia Roberts was trying to find a way, picked up Jason Alexander and threw him off the balcony.
And then you
That's
just
a
hear
good
like
moment.
like you just hear, what?
So you hear the ground opening up and then Jason
Yeah.
Alexander being swallowed back into the night.
It would be wonderful if Hector Elizondo was the man that murdered Jason Alexander, but
no, I agree. That would have
the
been
actors.
a much better way to handle that, I think, too.
It all would have been
all
gross
sucks.
rescue-y
Yeah.
stuff, though.
This is when I asked, what does Vivian see in Edward? Apart from the fact that he's rich, like what are his qualities that she falls in love with?
He plays
He's
piano.
cold. Anyway, then Julia Roberts leaves. She sets boundaries for herself. She's like, I want the fairy tale. You don't want to give him the fairy tale. This is done. Roberts then says goodbye to Elizondo. He's clearly become her dad. He says, it's been a pleasure knowing you. Come and visit us again sometime. Yeah, Hector's whole character arc is, what if you ran into Julia Roberts? Wouldn't you just like her?
Yeah.
Then she's in the back of a limousine. She's thinking, pondering. It Must Have Been Love by Roxette is rocking out and a storm is brewing. One of the most obvious storms in a movie of like, this is going to explain emotional turmoil for the character. It's like, you reckon?
It's like this and like Perfect Storm.
Yeah. Julia Roberts is moving to San Francisco. She and Laura San Giacomo say goodbye to each other. Laura San Giacomo has the great line, I gotta go because I hate goodbyes, which I just think is so good. Gere says goodbye to Elizondo and returns the fancy necklace. Elizondo says, may I, sir? And then looks at the necklace and says, it must be difficult to let go of something so beautiful, which is both the magic of a hotel manager. He's the fairy godmother in the Cinderella story. Also clearly likening a woman to an object, which is not great.
And then Gere ends his character arc with one last horrendous violation of privacy by Hector giving her
Yes, that's
giving
true. Yes.
Julia Roberts' address.
Yes, it gives. Then he goes chasing after Julia Roberts, appears on a white horse, which is a limousine, waving a sword, which is an umbrella.
Why has he got? Oh, the storm. Yeah, I remember
Of
being like,
course.
why has he got an umbrella in this sequence?
Opera is playing. It's La Traviata. Gere climbs up the stairs to the top floor to meet her and save her. This pays off like a slot machine for me. I started crying. And she says she rescues him right back. And then the guy walks past saying, this is Hollywood, always time to dream, so keep on dreaming.
Okay, you cried?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay.
No, I'm not shaming you for that. I'm actually genuinely interested.
Get in the comments, boys.
No. I genuinely am just like, wow, I fully did not have a emotional reaction to this film at all. But I cry in a lot of things, though. So
the Gere character is such a hole for me that I could not enjoy the
He
sequence.
overcomes his fear of heights.
he
That,
does.
I did
Climb
write
the
that down. I
tower.
was like, oh, that's where this is going. She has
Yeah.
a fire escape.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, that is
That's
good.
really
Honestly,
good
that's
stuff.
good.
What do
That
we
was
think about
pretty
the
woman.
kiss? Is it a good kiss?
No.
It's a
No, I thought so.
It's a weird
got his
kiss.
he's got
Yeah,
his
it's
neck
kind of
back.
tilted weird and
He's got a very tight jaw when he kisses Julia. In this
Yeah,
movie.
they don't. It's not a good kiss.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I mean, I didn't want to
Maybe
be
because
like
you know why? Because I haven't had time to practice it. Because they've kissed twice. in a
yeah,
week.
true.
So you know when you kiss someone for the first time, and sometimes you're like,
Yeah,
oh, we
first.
actually need to. We got to adjust.
Yeah,
a little bit.
yeah,
We got
yeah.
to figure this out.
They didn't give themselves a lot of time, so
No,
Yeah.
that's right.
okay.
So, should we bring it back to our boy Hector?
Yes.
Comparing, I think, taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3,
Mm-hmm.
smaller role, great in it, but it's probably not comparative like to Detective Sunday in this. If we had to rank them, not that we, where are we thinking? Because I think it'll be interesting when we add Princess Diaries to this delicious Hector Elizondo Sunday to kind of, what's up?
Detective Sunday.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking you were referencing.
That's definitely what I was referencing,
Oh, it was
and I did
good.
that on purpose.
Oh, it's good. Oh, wait, you weren't. Okay. It's like the time you didn't realize it. Mr. Grey. There was like shades of grey, and you were like, and I was like,
did
oh
not
yeah,
get that.
Mr. Grey.
I can't read.
Surprisingly, you're not good at puns.
No, I'm very bad. What do we think? Is this a better performance? Is this a? I mean, it's very different. I think I would lean towards Detective Sunday. What those TikTok You know those TikTok things that Rachel's been showing us where you have to lean your head one way or the other? We should do that with Hector Elizondo performances.
Yeah, let's make a filter.
Yeah, let's make a filter. That seems like an easy
I'm sure
job.
that one doesn't exist on TikTok. And there is, I would be very surprised.
I mean, that would be a fun thing for us to get into.
Millions of versions of people doing the Hector Elizondo roles.
Elizondo trend.
That would be sick, actually.
Trendizondo. Sorry, terrible.
Trendizondo's
Ella
great.
Trendo. Come on, let's go.
True. I would say, I actually really think he's great in Pelham. I do.
Oh, no, absolutely. I think he's great in Pelham.
I think that he has the most to do in American Gigolo. So it's fair to be like, that performance is really great as well, and there's a lot more meat on it. I think that what he achieved in this film, though, was to be the heart of the hotel, which is, I say this so often and I want to die every time I say it. The hotel's almost like a character
in the
itself.
movie.
I heard it coming.
We should have a little like jar for you to put money in every
Hotel
time. Every time you
places.
say a place is a character.
Yeah, or I say something about montage.
We're
It'd be a really great way.
going to unfortunately have to watch the movie Manhattan and see how many times you say it.
Actually, it's good. Can be your jar.
But the hotel, and I think that Hector does such a great job of being so warm and welcoming and likable and adds so much to it, and it's an iconic character. I'm going to have to say this one is probably his most iconic role.
So you're leaning towards
This.
Pretty Woman.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think it's
Seamus,
harder to play a nice character.
You're the tiebreaker.
Between Sunday and Pretty Woman.
I mean, you could also choose Taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3, and then it's all three that
I
we've
mean,
done.
that would
but
be
then we've got a
wonderful to
fourth
do,
one.
but I can't. I think. Look, I love him so much in this movie, and he got me through this movie in a great to a great
Sure.
extent. Like
For me, it was Julia Roberts.
Julia Roberts, but Julia Roberts and him like was the movie for me. That's every time I was like in really on board was when it was the two of them playing. But still, I just think I think it's got to go to Sunday. He is so incredible.
Good in that
He's
movie.
doing such a
I've thought about it
interesting
a lot in
performance.
the like 2 weeks since we recorded.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I'm just thinking about Detective Sunday. That's weird.
It's
I
fantastic.
know it's like we do a podcast about him for 4 weeks, but
I think he got nominated for a Golden Globe for this performance in
As
Pretty
he
Woman.
should.
And it's a small role. Like it's
Yeah,
not
it
in
is a pretty
terms of
small
camera
role.
time.
I think
Did you
it's-
get the Hexit? Did you do that?
Oh, the Hex at Elizondo. I did get it, but my hours are all screwed up because I missed his entrance.
Exodondo.
I believe it is. I think I started writing Hexic Exozondo, which is not going to be.
Or just combining them.
Yeah,
Just
just make it-
really just
Yeah.
adding piles of sweat to it.
So
That's good.
probably, yeah, I love sweat. Probably add an extra 15 minutes to this, but 1 hour and 53 minutes and 39 seconds is our actual Hexit Exozondo, giving us 1 hour and 14 minutes and 29 glorious sections of Hector Elizondo.
Can I say, just like back to you saying that to lose something so beautiful, you think that he's comparing her to an object. I know that could be a read on that. Yes, because he's talking, but I do think that there's this great thing where, as the fairy godmother hotel guy, he's often talking in codes the whole time.
Yeah.
You know? So there's that idea of
Love
when
this.
you're kind of like, she's your niece, or like there's a lot of being said without being said. And I think that I didn't view that as like he thinks that she's as beautiful as a jewel. I think that he's just like, it's just a code of how he can say, you fucked up.
That's such a lovely read. I love it.
That's a lovely read.
Yeah, I love to be generous towards a movie.
I think it is. Though,
It's about
I think
buying
it,
a woman.
It's about buying
It's
a
about
woman.
buying a woman.
it's about buying a
And
woman
then teaching
and
her that buying things is good.
telling her to stop fidget.
And also, most importantly, one of the best things you can do is build ships for the Navy.
It's
Send me iron, send me steel, I must destroy.
Yeah, this is a real love letter to capitalism. There's no point in which
it
it's
is.
not.
It's interesting that American Gigolo is such a teardown of
it
like
hates
they are,
capitalism.
and these movies are such opposites.
Yeah. Off the back of that, who do we think earned their paycheck?
It is very hard not to say Laura San Giacomo.
Mm.
I think she is so effing good in this. I think like she's maybe a slightly bigger part than Hector's, but not by much. Like she kind of disappears for like the middle of the movie. So it's kind of hard for me to not say her. I also think Marilyn Vance, the costumes in this. So
Incredible.
The brown polka dot dress, they found that in like, it's not called this, but
Yeah.
the American equivalent of like a fancy spotlight. They found that fabric, but they
Sick.
found exactly the amount for the dress and no more.
That's brilliant.
So they had to like
just like this.
get it right, like in one, and like not make any cuts that they didn't exactly need. So it was this like, it's like a feat of engineering.
That's sick.
It is sick.
And we should 100% cover her on the podcast.
Yeah, we'd love to do Old Vance.
So not including Hector
Not including
or
Hector.
Julia.
Or Julia.
You're certainly not allowed to choose Julia. Julia obviously earned her paycheck.
And every
and then
paycheck
more.
she
$70
got.
million on top of that.
I'm going to go with Richard Sorry, no. I just, sorry.
Look, the man did his best.
We're
With,
gearing up.
I
we're doing Richard Gere next.
Let's do Richard Gere.
We just did.
we did.
No, let's talk about Unfaithful. Is that what it's called? Faith?
I want to talk about Chicago if we do him.
Oh, yeah. We gotta find someone and do Chicago.
They're all wildly
Why
famous.
why are we just doing Gear movies now?
It's good gear.
We have done two things. One is movies
Sorry,
about things that go really.
Shamsi, It's Good Gear is the name of like the Patreon or whatever that we do, which is just covering Richard Gere.
I
no
hate
one
that.
subscribes to it.
Weirdly, we've got negative 50
It's just like-
subscribers.
I'm
We're having to pay
downvoting our own.
everyone money.
I'm downvoting our own podcast on that one.
I think that, and this is such a boring answer, and I can't believe I'm saying this. I really like the kind businessman.
Yes. I'm just getting his
Ralph
name.
Bellamy is his
Ralph
name.
Bellamy. Yeah,
But I also,
really good.
yeah, he does a great
It's
job.
great. When
I-
he says like, I don't know how to say this without it being condescending, but I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
I want someone to say that to me.
I
Yeah.
also think that the girls who play the snobby shop assistants do a
Do
great,
a great job.
at being very hateable.
Are they
And I think they did a good job.
Are they the Emily Blunt from Devil Wears Prada? Is that the generation of that character that then grows into a full character in Devil Wears Prada?
Absolutely.
I would say both of those would probably have been my picks as well. But now that they're both taken, I'm going to throw out Hank Azaria, who I think absolutely delivers.
It's an amazing performance.
It's an amazing performance with almost no time.
Nothing
And
to do.
so memorable. And then, yeah, I'm going to say Hank's my man.
Yeah, that's such a good one because it is such a like, here is one scene,
Yeah.
and
Blink and you miss
immediately it's-
Maybe because we know when he's famous,
Maybe?
though. I honestly, because I think that if I
His
watched that
delivery-
movie and I didn't know who he was, I can't answer this because I don't know how I would feel about it. He does a good job, but maybe I paid attention because I went, "Is that Hank Azaria?"
His voice is so good. Like, and you would miss it.
famously,
Famously,
He
a
is-
pretty good
let's,
voice
Let's see if
actor.
he's ever hired for it.
Run, Fat Boy Run. Is that Simon Pegg movie? Just voice roles for Hank.
What?
The
Genuinely?
Simpsons?
What are you talking about?
Doing a bit where I didn't know he was in The Simpsons.
Wait, is Run Fat Boy Run? Is that a voice performance?
No.
Okay, you needed to come up with another voice performance for that bit to
didn't
land.
have
I really thought that you were going to come in with the Mystery Men rant that you always do.
I love Mystery Men. The Blue Raja is an insane character.
Is that Hank
Why did I-
Azaria's character?
Yeah, Hank
Why did I
Azaria's-
open this up?
Hank Azaria. Oh God, Mystery Men fucking rocks. Anyway,
Okay, is this
for
movie
another episode.
better than Holes?
Yes, it is. I think just
Not at all.
just, and it's got a lot of problems. But I think there is something much like Holes. There's just something magical about it that makes it sing.
I think it's the same.
Well, it simply can't be the same.
I can't pick
That is the rule. You
it's
have
the same?
to. You have to.
It's on the same
you're
level?
gonna kill Seamus.
Why can't I pick that?
You're gonna no. The thing about Holes is that a movie has to be either better or worse.
Better or worse.
That's the whole
Okay.
premise of the fucking podcast.
I think that the film is better.
Thank you so much. That's right.
Oh no, it's worse.
Oh,
Thank you.
Sorry, I was just thinking of Julia Roberts again.
Julia Roberts is so fantastic.
Yeah.
I can't argue.
Julia
with
Roberts
that.
She
better
nearly
than
just
Shia
carries
LaBeouf.
it.
You heard it here first.
Julia Roberts better than Shia LaBeouf. But there were so many wonderful performances as Holes. Anyway,
Have you got something
Have you
for
got
we
some
us?
have a
bullshit?
game. Do we have time for a game?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. This is going to, it's a minute-long game anyway, so this is going to be pretty quick. It's just an idea that I had where I just kind of...
I knew that was why the paper was
Yeah, of
coming
course,
out.
yeah.
It's a paper. I'm going to put a minute on the clock, and I just need you guys to connect Hector Elizondo to Beth Grant through movie appearances.
Oh, this is going to be... So, here's the thing. This is going to be a minute of silence.
I'm going to read random facts that I have over the top
okay.
of it whilst you guys go and just sort of clear through. It's also, for the purposes, will probably be edited just to the... As soon as you've got it,
We could put like a
I'm going to
timer in.
I'm
like
going
a
to put the
doo-
minute on the
doo-
clock
doo-
now.
doo.
It's going to be so great to listen to.
Yeah, this is such good audio, dude. This is so smart.
It is so smart, and I really appreciate that you said that. Okay.
I'm so bad at this game.
I know. That's why I'm curious to see what happens.
I got it already.
What you?
Okay. Well, you can still win. Lincoln, you can still win if you can do it in less moves.
That's so dumb. I'm so bad at this.
Yeah.
Okay, press go on the timer.
It already is going.
What?
Yeah. You've already lost.
Okay.
Come on, Lincoln. Get back in the game.
Okay, no. Get
back in the game, Lincoln.
I did it.
You're losing. You're falling apart.
I did it in 6.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm
and that is a
not
wonderful
playing
win
anymore.
that is a wonderful win for Charlie Davenport.
All right, so I have
Yeah,
Beth
read it.
Grant is in Donnie Darko with Jake
That's great.
Gyllenhaal, who's in Love and Other Drugs with Anne Hathaway, who's in The Princess Diaries with Hector Elizondo.
An incredible job. I actually bought both prizes because I thought both contestants would actually play the game.
Is that okay? You didn't say start on the clock. You started before the clock even started, and then when I was like, okay, I will have a go, you were like, the clock's already
Well,
started.
Charlie,
That is
you
the
have
worst.
just won 2 DVDs.
Oh my god.
So the first one that I have is Victoria, and I can't read the rest
Abdul,
of it.
Victorian Abdul, the
Yes.
Judi Dench movie.
Absolutely, the Judi Dench movie. I picked that one because
Hang on a second.
Who has signed this one? Tina Turner?
Tim Legler?
so that is
It's
the
not
first.
Tina Turner, is it? 'Cause
That is the first movie you've won. I picked that because we're covering Princess Diaries next week.
please tell me it's not Tina Turner you've signed.
It's not Tina
Wait, is
Turner.
it
It is in
Julia-
fact Tim Allen. Because the second DVD you've won is Tim Allen, the Santa Claus.
Why? How is that related?
Because
apart
we
from it's
because we
produced
talked
by-
about Tim Allen, the Santa Claus for about 20 minutes.
That
at
had
the
to
top
be,
of
that had
last
to be
quarter.
cut from the podcast, I believe.
There we go.
Also, it's signed by Cormac McCarthy.
Okay, well, I'm going to start deliberately losing these competitions that I keep on winning before I end up with.
Actually, no, I'll take those.
Well,
These actually
You
look
have to
pretty
give
good.
them
the
back.
other
Lincoln.
rant is I genuinely thought that Santa Claus was about like a clause where Santa could break the law.
And it is.
And
Oh, I know. It's the legal defense.
It's the purge for,
It's the
for
Santa
Santa.
Claus.
That's Santa's clause.
So that was my new game, 6 Degrees of Betheration.
And I got there in 6.
It was really good. And Lincoln,
There's probably a
I
closer
love that
one.
you still haven't learned how to spell Cormac McCarthy's name. You refuse.
I
to
didn't
spell
write
it.
that, Lincoln.
Okay. Well, that has been
Cormac's hand rose from the recent grave. Apologies to his family.
has been this episode
Yeah.
on Pretty Woman. Next week we will be talking about The Princess Diaries, which is also a
Princess.
Gary Marshall film. There's a lot to talk about, but we just want to talk about because they are thematically, very similar.
It also felt kind of like the original plan wasn't to do both, like to just do one Gary Marshall film, but because it's such a long stretch of Hector's career, it felt like we're kind of shortchanging him without doing at least another Gary Marshall.
And I just didn't want to let go to him yet, especially not on this note.
Yeah, with you handing
you
over
being so
another
angry.
signed Santa Claus by Cormac McCarthy.
You have no idea what will come next week.
So please follow us on Instagram and Twitter and YouTube and all the things. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us. You can follow me on Letterboxd at Lincoln Vickery and on Twitter if you want. Who cares about that? But yes, please follow me on Letterboxd.
If you have any issues with what we've said, which is likely, then feel free to comment below. And
Call the
let
police.
us know. We'd love to keep the conversation going about Hector Elizondo. If you've got any other performances that you particularly like of his that you think we've missed, or any fun facts about Pretty Woman, anything like that, just let us know. We love to talk about movies in case that wasn't obvious with this literal film podcast. So thank you very much for coming. It's been a pleasure. Seamus, thank you.
Seamus looking
Sorry
at your
about
phone.
Richard Gere. Sorry about
No,
that.
that's all right.
We're
Look,
sorry.
I ultimately
we're sorry
enjoyed
you had to
this.
watch this fun movie, dude.
Yeah, I ultimately, I enjoyed the whole podcast. I just didn't love Gere.
Fair.
It's fine.
Well, thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Lincoln.
What's up?
And
Thank you, Charlie.
no worries. We'll see you next week for some Princess Diaries. And I have got some thoughts on this film and I'm excited to share them.